said you better watch what you're doing, 'cause I ain't gonna stop when I'm moving. I'm headed to the top, I'ma do it. I'm headed to the top, I'ma prove it. And I could go all night, I'm sick of being nothing. All right, I'm gonna be something. I'll fight with every breath, trust me. I'ma be the one at the top, you can't touch me. I bleed with every word coming. I would rather die than be someone who's nothing. I'm the type of dude who will not remain nameless. I'm the type of dude who is headed for greatness. I'm the type of dude who could really make changes, 'cause I'm the type of dude that's becoming contagious. I'm the type of dude that will always be ageless. I'm the type of dude that will always feel shameless. I'm the type of dude that they say is fucking heinous, 'cause I'm the type of dude that you know is fucking dangerous.
You are absolutely right. The way he went about it was absolutely wrong. Like, so, like I said, I'm not
of my Jewish hatred that actually goes. Other than the fact that why are y'all popping out of the sewers in New York City?
Annunciation Catholic Church. You couldn't call it pronounced Catholic Church?
Yeah, pronounce the Catholic.
Well, I think that went pretty good.
Respectfully, Mr. President, shut the f*** up. Shut the f*** up. Don't look at me. Don't say anything. Just put your head down. Look at the wall. I got to figure out how to unf*** this. Just everything we practiced, whoop, right out the window. Yeah, what do we say about lying?
I did not have sexual relations with...
What did we say about the people who lie? What do they do? They elaborate. They add way too much stuff. If somebody asks you if you did it, just say no. We had to physically restrain you multiple times in that deposition from talking too much. What the f*** is wrong with you? One word, just say no. This isn't the island and I'm not a 16-year-old girl. No is enough. No actually means no here. If you go, no. It's not the thing. You look guilty. Watch. Mr. President, ask me.
Ask you what?
Have you ever had sex with a minor?
Yes, many times.
No, ask me if I've ever had sex with a minor.
Have you ever had sex with a minor?
No. See? That's it.
Sure?
Yes.
You would know and remember. It's different.
Shut the f*** up and stop f***ing smiling. It makes you look guilty as f***. Watch. I've never had sex with a minor. I've never had sex with a minor. You see how f***ing guilty I look, like I did it and I'm proud of it? Speaking of proud of it, are you proud of it? Because you looked happy in that room. I mean, you're in a room full of people accusing you of on minors. At no point should you ever be smiling in that room. You should be pissed. Let's think of what's one felony you haven't committed. Oh my God.
Felony animal abuse.
Good. Okay, that's good. Now imagine I publicly accuse you of beating animals and I get a bunch of cameras and try to get you to admit to doing it. How would you act?
I'd be pissed because you're trying to get me to admit to something terrible that I didn't do.
Exactly, so why can't you do the same here?
Because I did it. Woo!
No, God! You're still smiling. Why are you still smiling? You were smiling through the whole thing even when they were showing you evidence of your felonies. Why were you so happy in the room? What could possibly be the reason for you to be smiling in that room?
You have to understand, there are only two places in the entire world where I can get away from Hillary. That deposition room and the Big Steins Island.
Okay, that actually makes sense.
You think that's how that actually fucking went? By the way, that was all jokes. Bill Clinton's lawyer after yesterday's Epstein deposition. It kind of sounds like how that would go down. Hello, everybody. We're going ahead and starting early. We're gonna get into the House Oversight. We're gonna start the Minnesota fraud one. We're gonna get a little jump start on it because there's a lot I have to go through. And yeah, we're gonna get a little bit of a jump start on it. Davey's gonna come in about just a couple of hours. We'll hit the members only and do the Clinton one. And then tomorrow we'll just pick up for where we left off on this one, the Oversight one, and some of the others that I've got to go through as well. But for right now, ladies and gentlemen, let's just get started. This is now at 1.5 speed. Let's go.
You ready? Ready? The hearing of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform will come to order. I want to welcome everyone here today. Without objection, the chair may declare recess at any time. I now recognize myself for the purpose of making an opening statement. Good morning. Today's hearing is about a failure of leadership, plain and simple.
Yes.
For years, Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison presided over one of the most extensive breakdowns of oversight this committee has ever examined. Billions of taxpayer dollars were stolen from social service programs while warnings piled up, whistleblowers spoke out, and state officials chose delay and denial over action. Federal prosecutors estimate that as much as $9 billion may have been stolen from just 14 Medicaid programs administered by the state of Minnesota. Those programs have cost taxpayers more than $18 billion since 2018, and investigators believe that half or more of that spending may have been lost to fraud. And that did not happen overnight. As our investigation has shown, it happened because state leadership failed repeatedly to intervene. Governor Walz has claimed his administration addressed fraud, and I quote, very early, unquote. But that claim does not hold up to the facts. His administration kept payments flowing. In January, the first hearing of this series, we heard from Minnesota state representatives who made clear this fraud was not hidden. It was known, documented, and repeatedly brought to the attention of state leadership. In case after case, state agencies identified red flags and received warnings from auditors and employees, but continued to send money out the door. Not because they lacked authority to intervene, but because they feared lawsuits, bad press, and political backlash. While Governor Walz hesitated, taxpayers lost billions. Attorney General Ellison has likewise claimed his office was aggressively holding fraudsters accountable, but when his statements were tested against the record, they fell apart. In the Feeding Our Future case, Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison publicly suggested that courts forced the state to continue payments. The judges in that case took the extraordinary step of publicly correcting them. The truth is the state made a choice once again to keep sending the money out the door. The Feeding Our Future scandal alone involved nearly $300 million stolen from programs meant to feed children during the pandemic. We're talking about fake invoices, meals that never existed, luxury cars, and overseas investments, all paid by the American taxpayer. Today, dozens have been convicted. The fraud was real, the warning signs were obvious, and state leadership failed to act. The same pattern repeats across Minnesota's social services system. In the Child Care Assistance Program, providers racked up dozens and in some cases more than 100 violations and still collected millions. Facilities shut down and reopened the same day under new names at the same address. This went on for years. Housing Stabilization Services, a program expected to cost $2.6 million annually, exploded to over $100 million a year. Federal prosecutors have described it as, and I quote, easy money. Providers billed services never delivered while the Walz administration failed to intervene until federal agents showed up. And when state employees tried to stop this, they were silenced and retaliated against for even daring to notice the fraud. We have spoken with over 30 whistleblowers, many of them current employees and Democrats, who say they were ignored, retaliated against, and even surveilled for raising concerns. Instead of protecting the whistleblowers, the Walz administration protected the system that enabled the fraud. We are taking oversight of fraud seriously, and today I hope the Democrats will do the same. But their track record is not promising. We followed up with the whistleblowers when state leaders ignored them. Republican staff spent 36 hours and 46 minutes in 9 transcribed interviews with current and former Minnesota state officials. Democrats, however, only asked 3 hours and 14 minutes worth of questions. That's inexcusable and frankly embarrassing. Taxpayers deserve better. We are working with the Trump administration, which is taking a whole-of-government approach to stop fraud before money is stolen. What we've uncovered in Minnesota is not a paperwork error or a few bad actors slipping through the cracks. It is sustained failure of leadership.
Yes.
Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison were warned repeatedly. Auditors raised red flags. Employees sounded alarms. Invoices didn't make sense. And still, the money kept flowing.
Of course.
While state officials hesitated, billions of taxpayer dollars were stolen from programs meant to serve children, the disabled, and families in crisis. While whistleblowers were silenced, fraudsters got rich. Accountability shouldn't begin only after federal prosecutors step in and clean up the damage. Accountability should compel leaders to act, and here they did not. Today, this committee expects answers, and we expect an explanation for why it took federal law enforcement, not state leadership, to finally turn off the spigot. Before we proceed, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter the committee's interim staff report titled, The Cost of Doing Nothing, How Tim Walz and Keith Ellison Fueled Minnesota's Fraud Explosion, into the record. Without objection, so ordered. And with that, I now yield to Ranking Member Garcia for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Comer. I want to thank, of course, the governor for being here today, the Attorney General as well, and to Reverend Mariah Tolgard. Thank you so much for being here. I especially want to thank the Minnesotans that I know have traveled here to be with us today to witness this hearing, but also in solidarity of the horrors and terrors that are happening, not just in Minnesota, but that have happened across the country. Now, we look forward to hearing directly on what life in Minnesota has been like, thanks to the Trump administration's actions. And the truth is that Donald Trump and Republicans have cut billions of dollars from health care and food assistance. That is a reality. Instead, with that money, they've used it to hire officers who are now terrorizing cities and killing Americans. That's where our taxpayer dollars have gone. We've taken from food assistance, we've taken from healthcare, and we superfunded terror on American streets. Now, Donald Trump has unleashed chaos against innocent Americans and across Minnesota, and we're going to talk about that today. Terror that has actually impacted real families and kids like Liam Ramos, who have been used, as we know, as bait. And we all know Liam's story really well.
Holy shit.
The reality is American citizens, innocent kids,
How the hell are you going to sit here and try to use this? The father of this child ran away from the child so he wouldn't get picked up. he still got picked up, but the child had to be taken into custody. What do you think they're going to do? Just sit there and let a child sit on the side of the fucking road because the father took off from the care of the child to not get arrested? Shut the fuck up, faggot.
People have been brutalized and ripped away from their families. They've been thrown into detention centers with horrible conditions that people are literally dying in these centers. Peaceful Americans have been killed by federal officers and agents and labeled them as domestic terrorists or assassins by their own government. Where is the hearing and the outrage for those actions? Now, Alex Preddy, as we all know, a VA nurse, was peacefully exercising his First and Second Amendment rights when he was pepper sprayed, tackled, disarmed, and then shot repeatedly in the back. Renee Good, a mom who told an officer, and I quote, "I'm not mad at you," end quote, was shot dead.
Okay,
just
so
moments after.
to
And this pattern
escape
of violence and
law,
lawlessness we've seen, of course, all
to
over the country.
escape accountability, all
Now,
you
our
have to
committee
do is say,
and
I'm not
Democrats have
mad at you.
documented over 590 cases of suspected misconduct by President Trump and Kristi Noem's immigration and enforcement agents across the country, not just in Minnesota. There's been 240 incidents of violence or concerning use of force, and 181 have involved United States citizens. Now, we've heard testimony that ISIS training has actually completely changed, and now it actually teaches our agents to violate the rights of American citizens. That's what we're teaching now to federal agents. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. DHS and ICE are out of control and must be held accountable by the Congress.
You know, I don't remember.
Now, Oversight
last
Democrats
time.
have been partnering to hold hearings to investigate these abuses, to hold DHS Secretary accountable. Stephen Miller, Greg Bovino.
What up, Jenno? How you doing?
And make no mistake, this is Donald Trump's personal police and military force he is unleashing on American streets. Now, the hearing that we have today is going to build on those investigations. Operation Metro Surge, which we're going to hear a lot about today.
I'm not mad at you, but
This
my
is
car
really
is.
about not just what's happening in Minnesota through that operation, but the ways that President Trump has waged his own personal war in
break
Minnesota.
the law as long
Instead
as
of
you
improving
say,
systems,
"I'm
of course,
not
we're talking
mad at
about
you, you can
fraud,
get away with
according
it."
to our Republican colleagues. But instead of improving systems to prevent future fraud, Trump's also cut off $259 million in Medicaid funding to the state. He's threatened federal food aid for 600,000 Minnesotans, including 200,000 kids. President Trump has tried to use fraud as his excuse for all of this. But what's really happening is violence, terror, death, destruction, and ripping away services from those that need it. You don't fight fraud by issuing presidential pardons to fraudsters. You don't fight fraud from ripping away food assistance to kids. Now, since his re-election, Trump has also given out jail-free cards to dozens of actual real fraudsters who could get out of repaying their victims more than $1 billion. Where is the fraud hearing on those abuses? And we know that you just don't fight fraud by singling out states.
Hold up. The jail of free card.
To fraudsters. You don't fight fraud from ripping away food assistance to kids. Now, since his re-election, Trump has also given out jail-free cards to
I'm going to slow it down to normal speed.
from ripping away food assistance to kids. Now, since his re-election, Trump has also given out jail-free cards to
The motherfucker said it. Giving out get out of jail free cards? Is that what you were trying to say, you pathetic, worthless pile of shit? Jail of free cards. Who the fuck says that?
dozens of actual real fraudsters who could get out of repaying their victims more than $1 billion. Where is the fraud hearing on those abuses? And we know that you just don't fight fraud by singling out states led by Democrats and ignoring states led by Republicans. Every single person here, and I know the governor and the attorney general believe this as well, we all want to fight fraud, waste, and abuse in government. Oklahoma, by the way, and Alabama lead the nation in SNAP fraud. In Texas and Florida, a Russian citizen has been arrested for submitting billions of dollars in fraudulent claims and funneling millions overseas. Where are those hearings? Where's the governor of Oklahoma or Alabama?
That is true. We have a whole
Texas, or
bunch of
Florida.
fucking...
I also want to note this. Because of the Trump
EBT
administration's
fraud.
illegal and unconstitutional actions, we know there is now 31 of 64 lawyers at the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office that have left. That is stunning. The lead attorney responsible for pursuing these fraud cases has left because the Trump administration ordered them, if we know, to investigate Renee Good's widow, not her killer. They were ordered to investigate Renee Good's widow, not her killer. If the president cared at all about fraud, we would not have...
Well, you dumb son of a bitch. She said, drive, baby, drive, as soon as the officer told her to get out of the car. Yeah, I would be investigating her as well for that shit. She said drive, she was, Renee Good was ordered out of the vehicle. Her wife, whatever the fuck you want to call it, told her drive, baby, drive. She hit the gas. ran into an ICE officer that shot her 3 times. Yes. Totally fucking justified. And yeah, I would be looking into her. You're going to sit there and say that that bitch can do anything and everything she wants because somebody else got shot? Are you fucking dumb?
Have all of these officers with all this illegal behavior on Minnesota streets. And we should remember that the Trump administration tried to use Operation Metro Surge as leverage to seize Minnesota's voter rolls. The Trump administration was never serious about addressing fraud in Minnesota. Instead, they've been interested in election conspiracy theories, in terrorizing kids. And they've accused the governor and attorney general of covering up fraud only to investigate them and turn up actually no evidence. What they're trying to do is convince Americans that there's a good reason for violence, for killings, and for violations of the law.
Oh my fucking
That's not acceptable,
God.
and we're not going to take that here today. I want to thank our witnesses again for being here, and I yield back.
Oh.
Ranking member yields back. I'd like to welcome our witnesses. First, we have Tim Walz, governor of the state of Minnesota. Governor Walz first took office in January 2019. Next, we have Keith Ellison, Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. Attorney General Ellison also first took office in January 2019. Finally, we have Reverend Mariah Furness-Tolgard, Senior Pastor, Hamlin Church United Methodist. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and we look forward to your testimony. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witnesses answered the affirmative, and please take a seat. We appreciate you being here today and look forward to your testimony. Let me remind the witnesses that we have read your written statement. They will appear in full in the hearing record. Please limit your oral statements to 5 minutes. As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it's on and the members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. When the red light comes on, your 5 minutes have expired, and we would ask that you please wrap up. I now recognize Governor Walz for his opening statement. Governor.
Thank you, Chairman
God
Comer,
damn it.
Ranking Member Garcia, members of the committee. I'm proud to be here today as the governor of the great state of Minnesota. Under my leadership, Minnesota has dedicated its resources to ensuring that all Minnesotans can live dignified and full lives with access to top-notch public schools, quality health care, good jobs. Thanks to these initiatives, Minnesota has been ranked as one of the best states to raise a family in, one of the best states to find a job in, and one of the best states to live in. Although Minnesota's programs have overwhelmingly achieved their intended purposes, they're not immune from fraud. I'll be the first to acknowledge that. But let me be clear. In Minnesota, if you defraud public programs, if you steal taxpayer money, we'll find you, we'll prosecute you, we'll convict you, and we'll throw you in jail. In this anti-fraud mission, we keep good company.
Really?
Across the country, our nation's
Does that
governors work
doubt
hard
it?
every single day to combat fraud in their programs. But even as we confront issues similar to our sister states, the people of Minnesota have been singled out and targeted for political retribution at an unparalleled scale, including blocking Medicaid reimbursements to our state just last week. Under the guise of
goddamn
combating
right.
fraud, the federal government has flooded Minnesota with masked, untrained, and unaccountable agents who are wreaking havoc in our communities. On the streets of Minnesota, federal agents have entered U.S. citizens' homes who have committed no crimes. They have violated the constitutional rights of our citizens. They have ignored court orders. They have shot first and asked questions later. Time and again, they have gaslit us by demanding
no.
that we ignore what we see before our very eyes. But the American people are not so easily fooled. The image of this brutal campaign are seared into our collective memory. The fragile innocence of the 5-year-old boy in a bunny hat being led away from his family. The maddening cruelty of a barely clothed man, a U.S. citizen, being dragged from his house in the dead of winter. The sheer devastation we feel of seeing the lifeless bodies of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Long after the federal government's agents of chaos pack up and leave, and long after the fraudsters in whose name this hearing was supposedly called are prosecuted and imprisoned, the good people of Minnesota will still be picking up the pieces from these senseless acts of cruelty and violence. As we forge ahead, I hope
Dude,
Minnesotans
this
will
is
remain
fucking
grounded in a sense of justice,
pathetic,
a sense of
even
right and
for
wrong.
him.
We know that the way to deter crime is to pursue offenders regardless of who they are,
Even
not
for
to pardon
him.
them because of who they know. We understand that a key to keeping our people safe is to allow prosecutors
He
to uphold the
didn't kill
law,
her, then he
not to
stripped
punish
her
them for
genitals.
refusing to violate it. And we appreciate that public trust comes from building common sense anti-fraud safeguards into our programs,
no,
not
one
by
of their
tearing down
own.
established norms.
One
I've
of their
invited here
own
today to
died,
talk about how
KB.
Minnesota
Come
pursues
on.
these objectives.
They
And I
can
hope
be
we can have a
used as a
conversation about how
weapon
to strengthen
against them.
program integrity in every state in the nation.
It wasn't
A
the
single
gun this
taxpayer
time, it
dollar
was
wasted
you.
on fraud is a dollar we can't tolerate. That's why, as governor, I have taken decisive action. I appointed a head of program integrity to oversee statewide anti-fraud efforts. I created the position of Inspector General at the Minnesota Department of Education. At the Department of Human Services, I ordered data-driven reviews and, where appropriate, corrective action against providers. I've directed my administration to work with our partners in state, federal, and tribal law enforcement to make sure that fraudsters go to jail. Our cooperation with the FBI and the Department of Justice have led to serious criminal charges for over 75 individuals. Most importantly, year in and year out, and long before Minnesota programs were featured on right-wing social media, I've worked with the Minnesota legislature to give state agencies the authority they need to
Right-wing
take
social
action
media?
based on red flags when they
Goddamn,
discover them.
dude.
There's undoubtedly more to do. We'll continue to do the important work of combating fraud, but as we do so, we're going to remain true to Minnesota principles. We will feed our hungry children. We will help the poor afford health care. We will assist people with disabilities while also keeping fraud in check. We'll demonstrate our decency, our integrity, and never yield to political scapegoating, particularly of our most vulnerable communities. In these extraordinarily trying times, the people of Minnesota have come together to show the world their values. I'm proud and honored to be their governor, and I look forward
And
to
if
today's
that's
questions.
their values, I
Thank
want
you, Governor.
nothing to
We now
fucking
recognize
do
Attorney
with
General
it.
Ellison.
I don't even think they should
Thank
be
you, Chairman Comer.
Americans.
And thank you, Ranking Member Garcia. And thank you to all the members of the committee. My name is Keith Ellison, and I have the honor of serving as Minnesota's Attorney General. You have invited me here today to speak about the topic I feel very strongly about, fraud enforcement. I look forward to discussing the contributions of my office and the contributions we've made to fighting fraud in our state. Fraud in government programs is reprehensible. It takes food from the tables of the hungry. It takes shelter from those without it. I have worked every day as Attorney General to hold fraudsters accountable, and I'm proud of our record. We've won 300 Medicaid fraud convictions, more than any other state of similar size, and recovered over $80 million for Minnesota taxpayers. We've returned tens of millions of dollars to victims of consumer fraud in Minnesota. Since 2019, our Charities Division has resolved over 50 investigations and dissolved 17 sham nonprofits. It's important to note that under Minnesota law, my office has limited jurisdiction over criminal matters. The only kind of criminal case we can prosecute all on our own is Medicaid fraud. Any other kind of criminal case must be referred to us by county attorneys. Still, we've punched above our weight where we do have criminal jurisdiction. I'm proud of that. Over the past 6 years, my Medicaid fraud control unit has ranked 5th in the nation in fraud convictions. Last week, I urged the state legislators to pass a bipartisan Medical Assistance Protection Act, which would give us additional resources to prosecute Medicaid fraudsters. Where fraud occurs outside of our jurisdiction, my office has and will continue assisting our local and federal partners. When our help is requested, we support our 87 county attorneys in Minnesota, and we regularly coordinate with federal investigators and prosecutors to combat fraud. That type of collaboration between enforcers at all levels of the government is essential in this fight. And that is why, if we are to discuss law enforcement efforts in Minnesota, we cannot ignore the devastating effects of Operation Metro Surge. As you know, the Trump administration, on the pretext of fighting fraud, unleashed over 3,000 masked armed agents on the streets of Minnesota.
Mormon
and as a result,
took him down.
2 U.S. citizens were killed by federal agents. Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Federal law enforcement still refuses to cooperate with us in investigating
that is
deaths.
pretty damn funny, though, ain't
innocent
it?
children were detained and traumatized. Schools and businesses were forced to close, costing countless families their jobs, their livelihoods, their education, and costing our state hundreds of millions of dollars in economic damage. Operation Metro Surge did nothing to address fraud in our state. It harmed our economy, it scarred our people, and it dealt a devastating blow to fraud enforcement in Minnesota. As a result of Metro Surge, federal prosecutors' efforts to fight fraud in Minnesota have suffered a major setback. In the U.S. Attorney's Office, 6 high-ranking attorneys resigned because of the Department of Justice pressured them to investigate Renee Good's grieving widow. 8 more prosecutors then followed. The remaining staff should be spending their time prosecuting fraudsters and criminals. Instead, they are drowning in immigration-related petitions resulting from Operation Metro Surge. Mr. Chair, members of the committee,
Hold up. You're going to sit there and tell me that they should be taking care of everything else that you should have been taking care of in the first damn place, but you didn't. And now you can't take care of the things that you did because you're taking care of the immigration. Roll that shit back.
Grieving widow. 8 more prosecutors then followed. The remaining staff should be spending their time prosecuting fraudsters and criminals. Instead, they are drowning in immigration-related petitions resulting from Operation Metro Surge.
You got prosecutors fucking quitting. They're already strained. And oh my God, we have to deal with immigration instead of taking care of everything else. I mean, is that not your fucking fault in the first goddamn place then? I mean, you didn't take care of it before it became a problem, so now it's overblown and you can't fucking do anything about it, and somehow it's somebody else's fault but yours. What the fuck?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we cannot combat fraud without consistent messaging and support from our political leaders. All sides, Republicans and Democrats, the federal government and the states, must work together if we're going to win the fight against those who would steal from the public. We need our leaders to unite in that effort, not to use it as a political tool to score political points. I stand ready and willing to work with the members of this committee to advance the cause of holding fraudsters accountable. Now more than ever, we need coordinated, cooperative engagement across law enforcement if we are to achieve our goals. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General. Now recognize Reverend Tolgard for her opening statement.
Chairman, ranking members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am the Reverend Mariah Tolgard, and I serve as senior pastor at Hamlin Church United Methodist in St. Paul, Minnesota. I come before you today in my personal capacity as a pastor, as a citizen, as a mother, an ordinary Minnesotan who has witnessed up close the fear and harm that Operation Metro Surge has inflicted on our state. The hearing today is about fraud in Minnesota, which is serving as a pretext for the terror the federal government has brought to the people of Minnesota. This fraud has been used as a rationale for deploying 3,000 federal immigration enforcement agents into our state in operations that target the most vulnerable among us, but are indiscriminately impacting all of us. Let me tell you about what this looks like where I live. In my church, Members have been afraid to come to worship and have even postponed funerals. An elderly Hmong man in our city, a U.S. citizen, was taken from his home in the freezing cold wearing only his underwear and a blanket. ICE vehicles drive recklessly through our neighborhoods in packs of 4 to 6, stopping people of color for proof of citizenship, including a local police officer. In St. Paul Public Schools, where my 3 daughters attend, nearly a quarter of students enrolled in distance learning because families were too afraid to leave their homes. My 8-year-old struggles to sleep at night because she is afraid ICE agents might break into our house. At local elementary schools in Minnesota and across the country, students are practicing drills for what to do if ICE is near their school.
I'm sorry, if your daughter is scared that ICE is going to break into your house, that's because you are putting that fear into that child. Why would the child be scared of immigration coming into a United States citizen's house unless you are not actually trying to cover something up? Oh, because you're trying to put that fear into that child. You are making that child live with that fear because that child should know nothing about immigration at this point in time. Let's just be honest. If you're going to use it, there ain't no way that child's like 16, 17 years old and understands at least something. That child is too fucking small to understand the complexities of the issue. And it is you putting that fear into that child, not ICE agents.
Let that sit with you. American children are now practicing 2 kinds of drills at school, one for an active shooter and one to protect themselves from their own government. That is not security.
Wow.
That is a nation failing its children.
Wow.
This is happening to
Wow,
all of our
ladies
neighbors in
and gentlemen.
Minnesota.
Wow.
Every Minnesotan has stories that will stay with you. From hearing of someone hiding in a walk-in cooler or the back room when ICE stormed into their workplace, to friends and family members
Holy
being followed
shit.
and dropping off their children at daycare. In Minnesota, we love our neighbors. We care for one another, and because we believe that every person bears the image of God, we've built systems that reflect that belief. Free meals for all children, health care for families who need it, schools where every kid belongs.
Free
That's
meals
what
for
love
all
of neighbor looks
children,
like
health
in
care
action.
for families who need
This
it.
administration has targeted Minnesota because we live out our values of loving our neighbors.
No. What'd you say, bitch?
In Minnesota, we love our neighbors. We care for one another, and because we believe that every person bears the image of God, we've built systems that reflect that belief. Free meals for all children, health care for families who need it, schools where every kid belongs.
You gotta feed them. You gotta make sure they stay alive, and you gotta educate them just because they exist. That is your duty because they demand it. Holy goddamn fuck. What are we doing, America?
That's what love of neighbor looks like in action. This administration has
No, it
targeted
doesn't.
Minnesota because we live out our values of loving our neighbors. These tactics aimed at undermining those values have not succeeded. When unidentified masked agents appeared on our streets, Minnesotans put on their own uniforms, and it said neighbor. Motivated by faith and conscience, we bought groceries for
You need
families
to
in
stop
hiding.
saying the
We paid
word
rent.
neighbor
We drove
because
children to
it's too
school.
close
We
to
stood vigil
something
at
else.
mosques. We served as constitutional observers. We pledged to care for children if parents were detained. We sang, we marched, we prayed. As a pastor, I say to you, if you feel even a flicker of discomfort hearing these stories, pay attention to it. If you hear about children like Liam Ramos, if you saw the videos of the murders of Alex Preddy and Renee Good, if you know of workers arrested in the very restaurants where they serve federal agents their meals, if you understand that citizens and legal residents have been wrongfully detained and something in you tightens, that is not partisanship, that is conscience. In my faith tradition, we call that the still, quiet voice, the voice of God.
Because you don't
It's not
believe
too
our
late to listen,
bullshit.
to change
If
our
you don't
minds, our hearts, and our
recoil in
policies.
horror,
To the members of this committee
you
and our
don't
leaders
have a
across government,
conscience.
the question I leave with you is simple. What are you willing to do about it? Your silence has a cost,
Holy
and it is
fuck.
being paid right now by children who cannot sleep, families who cannot grieve, and communities that are hollowed out. To Americans across the country and those watching from
You don't
home, and
have a
particularly
conscience
to the
if you don't
families
believe
still
my
too afraid to
bullshit.
leave
This is
their
fucking
houses.
amazing.
There are more people fighting for you than you know. Jesus teaches us in Matthew 25, whatever you do for the least of these, you do unto me. History will tell its story about us, but long before then, our own souls will know whether we stood with them or turned away. No nation can build a true future on the terror of its own people. Security built on fear will shatter the first time it is tested. Only a community that chooses love of neighbor over fear will endure, and that is still within our power to become. Thank you for allowing me to share our story. I am deeply proud to be a Minnesotan.
Thank you. Without objection, Majority Whip Tom Emmer from Minnesota and Representative McCollum, also of Minnesota, are waived on to the committee for the purpose of questioning witnesses at today's committee hearing. Without objection, so ordered. And now, okay, I'd like to recognize Representative McCollum for UC.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to, for the record, have a unanimous request put in with a statement. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered. We'll now begin our questions, and Chair recognizes the Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Mr. Jordan from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor, why didn't you tell the truth? Why didn't you just tell the truth about the Feeding Our Future program? This program, my understanding, received $3 million the first year. Within a couple years was getting $200 million of taxpayer money. Whistleblowers raised concerns. As the chairman said, auditors raised concerns. Everybody raised concerns. March 30th, 2021, the payments are stopped. And a little over a month later, the payments are restarted. Why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments?
Well, Chairman, we did tell you. And Feeding Our Future grew because of the pandemic. And
I asked that question. I said, why didn't you tell the truth about why you restarted the payments? The payments stopped because there were concerns, obviously. It wouldn't stop the payments. Then they restarted a month later. What was the reason for restarting the payments?
my understanding was the agency believed that the court had required them to make those payments.
And that was false, wasn't it? You repeated that. You said that, didn't you? You said that's why the reason. You said the reason you restarted is because the court ordered you to do so. Is that right?
I don't believe that is settled yet, to the best of my knowledge.
Well, I think it is. Because the court did something that I don't know if I've ever seen it. They issued a statement saying you were wrong in what you were saying. This is from the court. It says, Feeding Our Future versus Minnesota Department of Education, correcting reports and statements by Governor Tim Walz concerning orders issued by the court. Here's what the judge says. Governor Tim Walz told the media that the Minnesota Department of Education attempted in payments to FOF because of possible fraud, but that Judge Guthman ordered payments to continue in April 2021. Next sentence. That is false. So you said something wasn't true. He further states this. Judge Guthman, the court says this. Judge Guthman never ordered the Department of Education to resume payments to Feeding Our Future in April 2021 or at any other time. So I want to know, why didn't you tell the truth?
Congressman, the attorneys at the Department of Education interpreted that differently. Both of those judges are no longer on the bench. And I think that interpretation...
The very first sentence, the first 7 words. This is not some unnamed source talking to the New York Times. This is not some anonymous source talking to whatever your Minnesota Star, Tribune, or whatever your paper is. This is the court speaking. First sentence, first 7 words. Due to inaccurate statements by the governor, Ramsey County District Court judge has issued and authorized this following news released. That's pretty straightforward. So the court's lying?
I can't tell you, Congressman, but the interpretation...
Somebody's lying. Somebody's lying, because you can't say the court ordered you to restart the payments, and then the court says we didn't order you to restart the payments. So either you're lying or the court's lying. And I'm just asking you, which one is it?
I just simply know what the attorneys at the agency believed it was a misinterpretation. And I would note that those
payments... Could it be you were trying to hide behind the court, Governor?
Yes.
Could that maybe be the reason why you issued the statements you did and why the court had to do something you never see done before? They issue a press statement saying you're wrong. The governor is wrong. His statement is, their words, not mine, false. Could that be the reason?
That was not the interpretation of the attorneys. And you know, court work, you can appeal those, Congressman, as you well know. I'm sure
is it all about politics, Governor?
No, it's about taking care of our people, which Minnesota does better than anyone else.
$3 million. The behavioral intervention program went from $3 million to $400 million in 5 years. The housing stabilization went from $2.6 million to $104 million. The integrated community supports went from $4.6 million to $170 million in 3 years. And this is unbelievable what's happening. And you're trying to hide behind some pretend court order, some court order that didn't exist. Governor, who's Casey Magan?
I don't know who Casey Magan is.
Well, I'll tell you. Mr. Magan is a Somali American and a fraud investigator in the guy beside you's office, in the Attorney General's office. And here's what he said. There was a perception that forcefully tackling this issue might cause political backlash among the Somali community, which is a core voting bloc. Did that have anything to do with this whole fraud scheme that went on in your state, Governor?
It did not, Congressman.
It did not. So now you're saying Mr. Casey Magan is lying too?
I'm not.
You're the only one telling the truth in the whole state. Mr. Magan, who's a fraud investigator at the Attorney General's office, says it's politics. The court said
I couldn't speak for Mr. Magan. You asked me a question.
I know.
And I said no when you asked me the question.
I'm saying Casey Magan said just the opposite.
I don't know.
So the court's wrong and Casey Magan's wrong. You're the only guy right. How many people have been indicted in your state right now? Do you know, Governor?
I don't have those numbers with me.
You don't? 98 people have been indicted. You happen to know how many are Somali American?
I don't. We don't investigate or prosecute people based on ethnicity, religion.
Neither do I. We shouldn't do that. But Mr. Magan is a Somali American who just said that the court, one of the concerns was this is a core voting bloc. And I just want to know if you know how many of the 98 people who have been indicted in your state are Somali.
I don't. Their ethnicity is not my concern.
85% of the people indicted were Somali American, key voting bloc. And I think that's what drove this whole thing. Out of you back.
Gentleman yields back. Before I recognize the ranking member, it's my understanding, Mr. Biggs, you seek recognition?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have some UCs. Here you go.
Jesus Christ.
Biden clemency for convicted fraudsters met with outrage. Next one. Biden's clemency and pardon list includes former elected officials. Next one. The drug dealers, thieves, and gang leaders granted clemency by Joe Biden. Next one. North Dakota judge blasts Biden for setting fraudsters free. Next one. Victims shocked after Biden grants clemency to kids for cash. Next one. Who has Joe Biden pardoned?
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Ranking Member Garcia from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank, of course, our witnesses again for being here. Now, of course, over the past 2 months, countless brave Minnesotans have shared their stories of heartbreak and violence and terror, not just with us in this committee, but with folks across the country. Peaceful protesters are being shot in the streets. Children have been snatched from their schools. People dragged from their cars and tackled at work. And we know the parents, of course, have been missing work, and children have been missing school. Now, Reverend Tolgard, I want the country to really understand the effects on kids. Are you seeing families who can't go to work, who can't go grocery shopping, and who can't take their kids to school or the library or the park because they're terrified to leave their home? Are you seeing that?
Yes, that's what we are seeing in Minnesota.
And this includes, of course, U.S. citizens, right? We're talking about also families, U.S. citizen families, and kids who are United States citizens. Is that correct?
Yes, people who are U.S. citizens and legal residents.
Well, thank you. I want to just show this image here. This is an image of some kids, including, by the way, one of Liam Ramos's classmates. These are kids that are being held at U.S. detention centers and detention facilities. Now, Reverend Tolgard, when children hear about thousands of kids being detained, reportedly almost 4,000, that must be terrifying. Is that correct?
That is absolutely terrifying for children to hear these stories and to fear for that experience.
And would you say that kids are scared at their school?
Kids are scared at their schools.
Parents are scared of what's going to happen to their children. Would you say that's correct also?
That is correct.
Specifically to
well, thank
cover
you.
up this
now we're discussing
fraud.
the violence and brutality that's happening. I want to show another image. It's kind of difficult, I think, to see, but I think it's important for the American public to continue to see it.
Belter is telling the truth.
Now, this is the driver's seat of Renee Good's car seat after an ICE agent shot her dead. Now, Reverend Tolgard, are families in your community afraid that this sort of horrific image could happen to them next?
Yes.
Are kids scared that this type of horrific image could happen to one of their parents?
Kids like my own, kids like the kids in my church are afraid that that could happen to their parents when they speak out.
And let's remember that an ICE agent specifically told a protester, have y'all not learned from the
Y'all
past
putting
couple
that
of days?
fear into 'em,
This is
that's
just 2
why.
days after Renee Good was shot. That is being told to people on the ground in Minneapolis and across the country, across Minnesota, and it's not acceptable. We should be clear here. This violence does not make us safer. It does not address fraud, waste, and abuse. It doesn't help families with health care, does not grow or build small businesses, and it certainly, as we're continuing to discuss, is not preventing the kind of fraud that Republicans are discussing here today. Now, Governor, can you walk us through specifically how Operation Metro Surge affected Minnesota's ability to investigate actual fraud?
Well, thank you, Congressman. Well, first of all, as I said, we've been partners with the federal, our federal partners, whether that be the FBI or be the U.S. Attorney's Office, which I will note was one of the premier U.S. Attorney's Office, regardless of who they were appointed by. Right now, those lead investigators and basically that whole team has left that office. They've not been built back in. The U.S. Attorney himself was in front of a federal judge yesterday on contempt issues of that office not working together. Now, look, we're going to prosecute, as we have, every single person that's involved in fraud. But we can't do it alone. The Attorney General's office is doing everything they can. He has consistently come and asked the legislature for more money, more of the investigators he needs. But right now is the backlog at the U.S. Attorney's office is being challenged by the federal courts. It makes it more difficult for us to get those cases over to them. But the good news is the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is continuing to do those. We got a conviction this week. Those are things that'll continue on. And while we need to put in all the safeguards, we need to, as you heard the Attorney General's opening statement, if we partner together in this, our chance of defeating this fraud is that much higher. But right now, it's stymied. There's no investigators over there. There's no U.S. attorneys. The FBI has been decimated, and it's very difficult.
And that right there, the American public needs to hear. I mean, it's completely outrageous what's happened to those that are actually trying to take on fraud in Minnesota and across the country.
No, it's not.
Those offices have been decimated, and there's no support. Not acceptable. And Governor, finally, there appears to be actually no evidence that ICE and DHS reign of terror in Minnesota that continues has actually prevented any fraud. Is that your assessment, sir?
Protesters
That's correct. What you saw on the streets didn't do anything to it. And we've actively asked if you have folks who can help us, if you have folks who are good at the forensics, if you're a group that can help us do this, we want you there, as we have for the last 7 years that I've been governor. We partnered together and convicted people.
Thank you. And with that, I also, just for the record, want to introduce our report as well. Today, the Democratic staff released as well as far as relates to this hearing and Operation Metro Surge. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection to order, Chair now recognizes our Majority Whip, Representative Emmer from Minnesota.
Thank you, Chairman Comer, and actually thank you, Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison, for appearing before the committee today. Gentlemen, let's see if we can agree on at least one thing today. Today's hearing is titled Oversight of Fraud and Misuse of Federal Funds in Minnesota. Can we agree that this fraud is a serious thing, Governor Walz? Yes or no? Can we agree on that?
Yes, any fraud is serious.
Thank you. Because
why'd
it's
you let
interesting
it go on for
that
so
you and I
goddamn
agree that
long
it's a
when you
serious thing,
took
considering the
office?
man sitting next to you, your Attorney General Keith Ellison, just 2 months ago said, quote, "This is a political matter. This is not a serious thing," end quote. Attorney General Ellison, is there an organized crime ring operating in Minnesota? I'll answer for you, sir. Governor Walz believes there is an active crime ring in our state. In October, the governor said, quote, "We've got an organized crime ring in Minnesota. I think it's been going on for years." Moving on, Mr. Ellison, I, along with millions of Americans, have grave concerns over your alleged relationships with Somali fraudsters who have since been charged and convicted of federal crimes. I'm sure you are aware that over 90% of the defendants charged in the Feeding Our Future fraud case are of Somali descent. In fact, you have personal knowledge of these people. There's a 54-minute audio tape of your meeting with these criminals in December of 2021. And during your meeting, they complained to you about increased scrutiny of their nonprofits, and you told them, quote, "Of course I'm here to help," end quote. It's on the internet. Anyone can listen to you say that. Since then, you claim you were not aware of their crimes in the $250 million Feeding Our Future scheme, the largest pandemic fraud case in the nation. But just weeks after your December 2021 meeting, the FBI executed search warrants that you never would have requested in the Feeding Our Future fraud investigation. Now let's fast forward to September of 2022, 10 months after you met with the Somali fraudsters. Your office issued a press release stating, quote, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison and his office have been deeply involved for 2 years in holding Feeding Our Future accountable, end quote. So according to your office, sir, you have been deeply involved in the Feeding Our Future case since September of 2020. That actually sounds like you are saying that at the time of your infamous meeting with the Somali fraudsters, you were already aware of the allegations of fraud. When you had this meeting in December 2021, did you know, sir, about the long-running FBI investigation into Feeding Our Future? Yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Representative Emmer.
Reclaiming my time. When did you personally become aware of the FBI investigation? That's all I'm asking.
Representative Emmer, as you know, I have addressed this issue many times.
All right, reclaiming my time. In that same meeting with the fraudsters, Mr. Attorney General, you took aim at the Minnesota Department of Education. You stated that the Minnesota Department of Education had fought the nonprofit in very disgusting ways in a very racist, xenophobic, and Islamophobic manner. You actually asked for the names of all these folks who are just hung up and offered to call the Minnesota Department of Education to, quote, demand some explanations. We now know that when you made these comments, the Biden DOJ was working with the Minnesota Department of Education and that their work exposed the massive fraud ring. Pretty bad look for you, sir. Either you were oblivious to what was going on under your nose, or worse, you were trying to obstruct the work of the Minnesota Department of Education. So I can see the time is getting short. Mr. Chairman, we are left with two questions. One, what did Governor Walz and Keith Ellison know about the fraud? And two, when did they actually know it? I would suggest that if they do not give direct and truthful answers to both these questions at this hearing, then they both need to be put under oath in a deposition. This is a serious thing, Mr. Attorney General. You are the only one who thinks protecting taxpayer dollars is political. Mr. Ellison, my concern is that you actively obstructed this investigation in exchange for campaign donations, a quid pro quo. If these concerns are proven to be true, you should be disbarred and you should go to jail. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Ms. Norton from Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is critical that the federal government support people who need assistance with food, housing, and health care. Unfortunately, as long as the government provides these services, there will be bad actors trying to take advantage of them. We need to prevent and identify these fraudsters so that social services can reach those who need them. However, we cannot recklessly deny help to many people who need services because of a few bad actors. My Republican colleagues have now held two hearings to talk about fraud in one single state, but they have completely ignored the fact that the Trump administration is the most corrupt administration in history. If Republicans really cared about fraud, abuse, and holding criminals accountable, they would call them out. Donald Trump for firing 17 inspectors general. These internal watchdogs are the front line of rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse of federal agencies. The Trump administration has also retaliated against whistleblowers, and allowed administration officials to engage in serious conflicts of interest that often cross the line into outright corruption. We need inspectors general, whistleblower protections, and rules prohibiting conflicts of interest to protect federal programs and make sure that people can get the services they need. Across the country, Americans are struggling to afford their health care, premiums, and groceries. The Trump administration should be strengthening the social safety net, not cutting the safeguards that catch the fraudsters taking advantage of it. And I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I'll now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison, my questions are going to be simple and direct. Governor Walz, you were inaugurated as governor on January 17, 2019, and have served in that role through 2 terms ever since, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
During the time period 2019 and 2020, while you were serving as governor, isn't it true that state auditors and officials raised concerns about fraud and vulnerabilities in programs overseen by your administration?
I can't confirm that, but I'm assuming we have always ongoing OLA.
I'll take that as a yes. Those warnings were communicated to senior officials in your administration, including yourself, correct?
I can't speak if it was directly.
I think the correct answer to that would also be yes. Despite those warnings, you did not order a broad stop payment or suspension of payment in any program at that time, correct?
We're not going to stop payments of feed children until we have the proof that things happen. In 2019, we did start taking action. I went to the legislature.
Governor Walz, when fraud concerns were raised early in your tenure in the Child Care Assistance Program, did your administration stop payments at that time?
The child care assistance program and
the answer is no. When fraud concerns were
Would
raised,
you like me to answer or not?
Well, it's yes or no.
I want you to help.
You've already answered the question. You said you didn't ever stop payments, and that's what the problem is, and that's what the Democrats are complaining about. Oh my gosh, Trump stopped payments. Well, my God, you lost billions to fraud in Minnesota. That's what this hearing's about.
Chairman,
you didn't stop payments because you didn't want to rock the boat. And when fraud concerns were raised, when fraud concerns were raised in Medicaid, home and community-based services, did your administration stop payments? No, you did not. When fraud concerns were raised in non-emergency medical transportation, did your administration stop payments?
Chairman, if I could mention what a stop payment meant by what the administration did last week is 400,000 children without health care. Are you stopping payment of one person?
We believe that's your fault and the Attorney General's fault because you do nothing about fraud, even though everyone in America sees
our Medicare error rate is lower than your state.
Fraud. You have been defrauded. You have not been good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. And the Democrat position is, well, keep the money flowing. The American taxpayers have had enough.
I think that's a fair
characterization. They want their taxpayer dollars spent wisely. We all support social programs
not a fair
for the vulnerable. But if you're going to waste the money to fraudsters, then we have to stop and recalculate.
We're not. We're putting them in jail when we can, Chairman. And some of these programs are crafted in such a way that there's a procedure to follow. And I'm with you. $1 is too much. I don't think there's a lot of difference here if you want to help us get at this. The question is it a sledgehammer or is it a scalpel? I understand there's no political upside.
Well, let's get into what we've talked. You eventually did pause payments in certain programs, but that wasn't until late 2025 after the federal government stepped in. Is that correct?
I don't think that's a fair characterization of stepped in. We've been partners in this and working on them. But
let's move on. And that decision occurred only after large-scale fraud had already taken place for years.
Shit.
Now, Governor Walz, employees inside state agencies raised concerns about fraud and improper payments for years. Is that correct?
Inside agencies, we've been prosecuting them for years. Yes,
they have raised concern. Agencies have raised concern about fraud in Minnesota. Correct.
Each of those, yes, when they do, and they're prosecuted.
Some of those employees faced retaliation after raising those concerns. Is that correct?
That is not correct, Chairman.
Okay.
Minnesota has strong whistleblower protections.
Attorney General Ellison, you are the chief legal officer of the state of Minnesota, correct?
Yes.
Your office advises agencies on compliance with federal and state law, correct?
Yes.
Retaliation against whistleblowers reporting fraud is unlawful, correct?
That is right.
At any point during your tenure, did you tell state agencies to
How
stop
are they
payments due to credible fraud allegations, yes or no?
Sir, we prosecuted over 300 people in the Medicaid fraud area.
300, I would predict, is a drop in the bucket. But you've never said to stop payments. That's
it's one of the highest rates in the country, sir.
Well, you have one of the highest fraud rates in the country in Minnesota.
That's not true. My office doesn't have the authority to do a stop payment. We prosecute criminals when they're presented us by the agency.
So the answer is no, unfortunately. No one's ever from your office said to stop payments until we can get the fraud under control. So to summarize, you both knew about fraud, risk, and payments continued. Our investigation has shown that whistleblowers who were alerted about the widespread fraud were ignored, sidelined, and even retaliated against. Only after federal authorities ultimately stepped in did you take any action. It's not this committee's responsibility to decide guilt or dole out punishment, but it's clear there was a massive failure of oversight and, quite frankly, a failure of leadership. One wonders whether either of you should bear some personal responsibility for the billions of dollars siphoned off by fraudsters under your noses in the state that you led. Again, this isn't for the committee to decide, but based on your answers today and apparent failure to take any responsibility, still the answer to that question has become abundantly clear. And now
Mr. Chair, I seek unanimous consent to enter items into the record.
All right, before I recognize Mr. Lynch, Ms. Randall, you have a UC?
Thank you. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a November 12th, 2025 article from ProPublica entitled How Trump Has Exploited Pardons and Clemency to Reward Allies and Supporters, which shows President Trump rewards those in his good graces. I also seek recognition to insert into the record a Washington Post article from December 19th, 2025 entitled Trump's Pardons Wipe Out Payments to Defrauded Victims, which shows that President Trump lets criminals and fraudsters walk free. And I also seek unanimous consent to enter into the record an article from May 29th, 2025 from ABC News titled Trump's Flurry of Pardons Include Some to Campaign Contributors.
And Ms. Presley, we'll do one at a time. We'll go to Mr. Lynch, then I'll recognize you. Mr. Lynch from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor, good to see you, my friend. Attorney General Ellison, good to see you again. Reverend, thank you for your willingness to testify before the committee. I want to shift gears here a minute, and I want to focus on ICE. So I was recently asked to serve as the co-chair of the 5 for 26 soccer tournament. It's a global tournament, the largest sporting event in the world. And my home city of Boston has been asked to host a lot of the games. In Boston, we'll host teams from Morocco, Ghana, Bolivia, Iraq, Scotland, France, England, and Suriname.
Well, I mean, he's got to make it sound not so bad for him, right?
Over 3 million foreign national visitors who are coming into Boston for these tournaments. And we recently learned from the Trump administration that ICE will play a key role in the security operations during those games. So we've got all these people flying in, foreign nationals, a lot of different countries, South America and elsewhere. Governor, since you've had direct and relevant experience on dealing with the Metro surge and the security operations of ICE, I was interested in getting your thoughts and your observations and any recommendations you might have to help us with confronting our experience of what we expect to see during these games with ICE coming in as well as so many foreign visitors.
Well, as I think the world saw, and don't take my word for it, take professional law enforcement across Minnesota and across the country.
No, you're talking about
the most unprofessional,
Randall's
aggressive
words.
force that I think you could imagine. And I was here in front of this committee and answered all your questions on June 12th. And I warned this committee what a masked group of folks turned loose in an American city could do. And if I'm not mistaken, I said someone could get killed doing this. And I just want to be very clear about this. When Tom Homan had to come in to clean up the mess of Secretary Noem and Greg Bovino, Secretary Homan himself acknowledged Minnesota follows the law, exactly as I told you in this committee. So my advice to you,
are you talking about the feeding
Mr.
our
Lynch,
future thing, or
is to get very public, upfront commitments from these folks. While I disagree with Mr. Holman's views on many things, he's at least professional enough that he pulled the leash back and pulled these folks out of Minnesota after, again, misrepresenting the number of people they were detaining, misrepresenting before he got there exactly what Minnesota did. And I'm just going to name it on accountability. The Secretary of DHS, being chastised by Republican senators, added insult to injury to Minnesota, pouring salt in the wounds of the parents of Alex Preddy and Renee Good's family by not even apologizing or acknowledging. And if you want accountability, for one of the times, as far as I know, the attorneys know better, we are not being included in the investigation. And the actions that were taken of a gentleman who was shot in the leg was the night that Kristi Noem called me a domestic terrorist and said that this gentleman was attacking federal agents. Well, now we know the story. They lied. They are now under investigation, they being the federal agents.
I mean, you are a domestic terrorist.
I want your help on fraud. Why would I not want money to go to the programs I care deeply about, feeding people, clothing people, housing people? But what ICE did disrupted everything that we were doing. It disrupted our federal partners. And it forced our law enforcement agencies, who have worked hard to gain the public trust, to have the public believe in them. So my advice to you is, and especially when the world's coming to see this, let Boston's finest lead. Let the people of Massachusetts lead. Let the 10th Amendment stand for something and allow us to be able to do this. The people of Minnesota will hold us accountable if they don't feel we're doing a good enough job. But to demonize and retribution against a state, in the words of the president, in the words of the vice president, have done nothing. So, Mr. Lynch, the world should be looking forward to coming, but I would get it up front, and I would make sure that Boston's police department are in the lead.
Thank you. Attorney General Ellison, we need coordination between law enforcement agencies. This is a big job. What are your views on that likelihood of cooperation from ICE?
Well, I hope you get the cooperation that you need. In Minnesota, we don't have a good record of cooperation, which is interesting because so many times in the past, we have had great cooperation between local federal enforcers and local state ones, and we've just worked seamlessly. Nowadays, that has all changed, and that's quite unfortunate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back. Thank you for the courtesy.
Gentleman yields back. Ms. Presley.
Thank you. I ask unanimous consent into the record a February 2026 letter from 200 state lawmakers urging Congress to exercise its oversight authority and demand the administration immediately restore full child care funding that had frozen in 4 or 5 states.
Without objection? It's ordered.
Feed the children.
Chair
woman.
recognizes Dr. Fox from North Carolina.
After Minnesota
Thank you,
agreed
Mr. Chairman.
to
I thank our
cooperate with
witnesses for
ICE
being here.
while
Governor,
special
you've reminded people that you were here last June. At that time, I reminded you that the Feeding Our Future scam made Minnesota ground zero for the largest COVID-19 fraud scheme in the nation. $250 million in federal taxpayer funds were taken out of the mouths of hungry children, and as the FBI noted, they were, quote, funneled into luxury homes, cars, and lavish lifestyles while families struggled. You assured me then that you wholeheartedly supported the federal government's effort to bring those responsible to justice. I appreciate your sentiment, but a person's actions matter more than their words. Governor Walz, when did you first become aware of the fraud in Feeding Our Future? A specific date, please.
Well, Congressman, it's good to see you. And having served in your job for 12 years, I can tell you my job is a little different as governor for 7 years. I take a lot of meetings. I certainly wouldn't specifically state, but I think during that pandemic, I think by late 2020, we started to see the irregularities. They were flagged. And I will note that we cooperated.
State officials were aware of the fraud in early 2020.
Hey, my job's different than yours,
So you're asking when in my office, the governor became good, and I don't have a specific date. But what I would say is we provided witnesses, documents, the U.S. Attorney and the FBI, and 79 of those people have been prosecuted going back to 2022.
Okay. Well, when I was chair of the Committee on Education and Workforce, I issued you a subpoena in September 2024 because you and your administration were not forthcoming about how your administration, quote, failed to identify what has been described as the largest pandemic fraud in the nation, end quote. In September 2024, you were aware of the Feeding Our Future fraud and your administration's handling of it, correct? Yes or no?
2024? Yes, by that time we had already put people in jail and had extensively investigated.
This committee has testimony that the Minnesota Department of Education briefed your office about the Feeding Our Future's draft lawsuit and litigation hold on April 28, 2020. Let me jog your memory. Is that correct?
I can't speak specifically to that. And if it's
it was April 2020. That means Feeding Our Future received a total of over $200 million in federal funds after you and your administration knew about the fraud concerns. Why didn't you stop sending money to Feeding Our Future as soon as the fraud concerns were raised?
Congressman, is following the program, we notified USGA under the Trump administration's first term. We notified them, too, because it's a program administered out of USDA, and they were working to work through the process. Eventually,
didn't you say you were fearful of political retaliation from
I never
the
said any
FOF
such
founder?
thing. I never said any such thing.
Well, that's what we understood. You were afraid of political retaliation. So given the size and scope of the Feeding Our Futures fraud, I think you and your administration would have been on high alert looking for additional fraud in the state. But after seeing the handling of Feeding Our Futures and its $250 million in fraud, it came as no surprise to learn that even more staggering amounts of fraud, estimated at up to $9 billion, were uncovered in the Child Care Assistance Program, the Minnesota Medicaid program, and other programs. How could you allow such massive fraud schemes in your state to get to this point?
Congresswoman, we don't see anything by 9 million. Local press and everyone reports it about 300 million. But as I've said, if it's $1, it's too much. But we started in 2019 putting anti-fraud programs forward. After Feeding Our Future, we started going through and making sure every program had the integrity in it that it needed. And that's why you see convictions. That's why you see these
why did it take nearly 7 years for you to get engaged to stop the fraud? 7 years.
We started in 2019, Congresswoman. It may be a surprise. If you arrest someone for stealing a car, other people are still going to try and steal cars. What we've tried to do is bring program integrity. But I'll go back to this. We're not going to shut down programs that have things that are going well in it. And we need to find that proper balance. And I've acknowledged that every year we're putting things in place. And Inspector
Governor Waltz, you did not do your job. You did not do your job. You did not protect taxpayer dollars. You allowed massive fraud. You and Mr. Ellison allowed massive fraud to go on in the state of Minnesota. And it is unfortunate, as somebody said, that you can't be held personally responsible at this stage of the game. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes Mr. Christian Morte from Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Governor Waltz, you've seen firsthand the brutal excessive force used by ICE and CBP agents in Minnesota. Unfortunately, we saw the same tactics employed in Chicago during Operation Midway Blitz. I want to turn now to ICE and CBP's horrific pattern of abuse. Secretary Noem went to our cities ostensibly under the guise of arresting, quote, the worst of the worst. But in Illinois, less than 3% of those arrested during Operation Midway Blitz had criminal histories. In Minnesota, the vast majority of those detained had never been in trouble with the law, correct?
I believe that's correct, Congressman.
There were also more than 170 cases this year where ICE and CBP detained U.S. citizens. U.S. citizens should never be detained by ICE, correct?
So they should be allowed to stay here. The illegals should be allowed to stay here if they haven't committed a crime. Being here illegally is a crime. So 100% of these people are criminals. Huh. And that includes the U.S. citizens that they're taking into custody and they're arresting because these motherfuckers are actually attacking ICE officers out there. Yes, they are criminals too. Holy fuck, this is not hard.
It's correct. I would hope we all could agree on that.
Well, I hope so too. According to the Chicago Sun-Times, federal agents have pepper sprayed children, including this 1-year-old baby in Chicago. And children should never be pepper sprayed, right?
I would hope we could all agree on that too. They should not.
And according to The Independent, CBP agents dragged a 67-year-old U.S. citizen out of his car, breaking his ribs and causing internal bleeding. No person should be subjected to that kind of treatment, right?
They should not, Congressman.
Attorney General Ellison, let me turn to another topic. In President Trump's second term, ICE has become America's highest-funded federal law enforcement agency with a budget of more than $85 billion. If ICE were an army, this budget would make it the 13th largest army in the world. Let's look at where that money has gone. Last year, DHS spent $172 million on 2 private luxury jets for Secretary Noem. I assume you're not aware of a stop payment on that particular payment, right?
No, I'm not, sir.
Republican Senator John Kennedy yesterday grilled Secretary Noem about a $220 million ad campaign featuring her prominently, including on this horse in front of Mount Rushmore. Secretary Kennedy suggested this was wasteful spending, and I agree. I assume you'd agree with that as well, right?
I do. Yes.
This gross misuse of funds must end now, and Secretary Noem must be held accountable. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. Chicago was ground zero for Secretary Noem's overreach when she launched Operation Midway Blitz. Chicago media reported that ICE and CBP agents had pepper sprayed a 1-year-old baby, shot at a pastor, harassed seniors, tased U.S. citizens, and even killed a person. It's clear that Midway Blitz was never intended to make Chicago safer. In December, ICE and CBP began Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota. Over 3,000 agents were sent to one state. There were military-style raids at child care centers. Children kept home from school. Adults postponing medical care. In Minneapolis, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, both U.S. citizens, were fatally shot by federal officers. It's clear that Operation Metro Surge was never intended to make Minnesota safer. But this is not isolated to just Illinois and Minnesota. Inside detention centers across the country, the suffering continues.
What the fuck are you
Detainees report
about?
physical and sexual abuse, medical neglect, and pressure to self-deport. On top of that brutality, Kristi Noem is misusing funds to buy herself private jets and enrich her associates. Kristi Noem is testifying in the House Judiciary Committee today, but she must come before this committee to explain the rampant corruption and waste within her agency. DHS is out of control. There is no congressional oversight. I was denied entrance to ICE facilities twice in Illinois. There's no accountability. Secretary Noem has still not appeared before this committee, nor has she responded in a substantive manner to more than 12 letters I've sent her. There are no consequences. Noem is still the leader of DHS despite regularly breaking the law and abusing her authority. Secretary Noem must answer for her wrongdoing. For Jaime, my State of the Union guest, who raises his little sister after his father was coerced into self-deportation. For Chicagoan Marimar Martinez, who was shot 5 times. For my constituent Evelyn, an 18-year-old U.S. citizen who was wrongfully detained by ICE. For Renee Good, Alex Preddy, and Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, and all the other victims of ICE and CBP. For the American people. It's for all those reasons that, Mr. Chairman, pursuant to Clause 2K6 of House Rule 11, I move to subpoena Christy Noem to testify before the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. This is for every family impacted by Christy Noem's terror campaign. They demand answers, and so do I.
A motion has been made. The committee will hold this motion in abeyance until the end of today's hearing. The committee will now proceed with today's hearing. And I want to remind everyone, I believe Christy Noem is testifying in front of the Homeland Security Committee in the House today after testifying in the Senate yesterday. Chair, before I recognize Mr. Cloud, I believe Mr. Higgins has a UC.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an interview from December 2024, with the Minnesota Star Tribune with Governor Walz, noting the federal investigation into the Early Intensive Developmental and Behavioral Intervention Program, the EIDBI program, serving autism patients since its first year of inception in 2017, growing from 1.7 million per year to over 400 million per year.
I worked with the National Guard in Iraq.
Without objection to order.
Safer
Chair
in a war
now
zone
recognizes
than
Mr.
in
Cloud from
Chicago.
Texas.
Oh, hell yeah.
Thank you, Chairman.
That's
Thank you for
why
holding
it's
this
called
hearing. This
Chirac.
hearing was designed to be a hearing looking into the massive expansion of some of the social programs and the fraud that was contained therein. But Reverend Tolgard, I was struck by part of your opening statement because you invoked Matthew 25, and that's a scripture we see tossed around a lot up here, but often without context. And so I went and got my Bible and thought we'd dig into Matthew 25 for a minute. The scripture you invoked was Matthew 25, 35 through 40. It ends with this. It says, "Then the righteous will answer to him, Lord, when did we see you hungry, feed you, or thirsty, and give you something to drink? And when did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and come to you?" And the king will answer to them, "Truly I say to you, to the extent that you did to one of those brothers of mine, even the least of them, you did this to me." I would ask you, who's the you in that passage?
Thank you for your question. You, meaning all of us, the followers of Christ.
Followers of Christ, right. In Matthew 24:3, it says, after Jesus was sitting on the Mountain of Olives and the disciples came to him privately, and then they asked him, that began this whole chapter. Now, what Christ didn't say was to lobby your government. He said, if you have, you give. That's the general biblical principle here. 2 Corinthians chapter 9 gives us probably the best scriptural understanding of what charity is. It says, each of you should give what you've decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly, under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Would you say that taxes are under compulsion?
Taxes are not my area of expertise, but
But are they given under compulsion? Do you pay your taxes?
As a U.S. citizen, I pay my taxes.
Yes, because what happens if you don't?
We don't have the services that we need to support our...
What happens to you personally if you don't pay your taxes?
You get in trouble.
You get in trouble. I would say that's under compulsion. So if we're talking about what charity is, I'm always amazed in DC how much of we get to define our personal worth as a politician or statesman or whatever you want to call us by, how much of other people's money we give away. And so there's certainly a place for a social safety net potentially, but the idea that Matthew 25 is kind of used as a blanket statement. As a matter of fact, the parable that it gives right before that scripture that you go into is the parable of the talents, where you see someone, a business owner, go away and he leaves 3 employees in charge and gives them each a bit of investment. And 2 of them turn their investment into a profit, and one that turns it not into a profit, he does nothing with it, just sits on it. What does he call him? You're a pastor, right?
Yes, I am, sir. I don't have...
He calls him a wicked and a lazy servant. And so, scripturally speaking, God expects us to do something with what he's given us. Now, Romans 13 talks about the purpose of government. Scripture is replete with, there's different institutions that each have a different thing. The primary job of raising our kids and taking care of our families and the institution of the family. The government has a different one. It says, for the one in the authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid. For the rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants to bring agent of wrath on the wrongdoer. Would you say that someone who commits fraud is doing wrong?
If you were a pastor, you would know this, right?
Is fraud theft? Would you agree that that's theft?
Yes.
As the 8th commandment says, thou shalt not steal. Would you recommend that someone in your church go into debt to give an offering in your church?
No.
Okay, so we have a massive program of fraud that's being paid for by taxpayers, and certainly us paying it. It's really our kids and grandkids that are paying it. And yet we continue to see this massive expansion all under the taken out of context of what charity is being defined as.
Of course not.
It's interesting. I find it odd that the left continues to bring up Matthew 25, because at the very beginning of that, right before he goes in that scripture that we talked with, it says, Matthew 25:32, all the nations will be gathered to him, and he will separate the people from one another as sheep and goats. He will put the sheep on his right and his goats on the left. And the king will say to those on his right, come in, you are blessed of the Father, take your inheritance to the kingdom. And those on his left, he will say, depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. So I would caution those who begin to use Matthew 25 to do so in the proper context, understanding that we have multiple biblical institutions and they each have a purpose.
The context here is vast.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit the entirety of Matthew 25 into the record.
Without objection?
Mr. Chairman, I also have a unanimous consent item.
Without objection? Does anyone object to?
Thank you. It's a Huffington Post.
I recognize you, Mr. Does anybody object, Mr. Cloud? Without objection, so ordered. Now I'll recognize Ms. Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Comer. I'd like to enter into the record an article from the Huffington Post yesterday. Troops being told Trump's been anointed by Jesus to cause Armageddon in Iran.
Without objection, so ordered. Well, we do want. Let's recognize Mr. Connor, then I'll get Mr. Waukesha. Mr. Connor from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Waltz, when I went to Minneapolis and was at Alex Preddy's memorial, I was struck by the people there. I expected a lot of folks who were immigrants, and I expected or folks who were children of immigrants,
expected better
looked
from
brown
you,
like me.
Connor.
And there at the memorial were 4th and 5th generation Minnesotans, most of them white Americans, talking about how they faced tyranny, how when they go to church, they were being followed by ICE agents. When they go to give a meal to an immigrant, they were being followed by agents. And I just had so much hope for our country seeing them there. And I want to thank Minnesota, as a Californian, as someone who grew up in Pennsylvania, as an American, for their character, for their courage, for what they have modeled in a multiracial democracy. And my question for you, having served as a congressman, a governor, what is it about Minnesota that we can learn? What is it that leads to this kind of inclusive feeling about immigrants in our nation?
Well, thank you, Congressman, and thanks for your work on many fronts.
Not a goddamn thing.
Look, I think Reverend Tolgard summed it up in getting at the heart of this. It's about the neighborliness and the care. And left to our own devices, I'm going to make the case, Minnesota, and by the way, I would remind folks, states have to balance their budgets. We're AAA bond rated, one of the states that's ranked the highest. We have a surplus, and we also have the highest rainy day funds, one of the strongest protections. So we understand fiscal responsibility, but we also understand this caring, this neighborliness. People saw their neighbor. I believe our politics can change with that idea of what the next door neighbor looks like. Now, I will have to tell you, Mr. Khanna, I was deeply concerned last year when the Vice President of the United States mentioned he can understand why people wouldn't want to live by somebody who's not like them, which seems to go against our entire ethos in Minnesota, whether it was the first wave of Norwegian and Swedish immigrants that came to Minnesota, German immigrants like my family, or whether it was Hmong coming after the Vietnam War, or Somali and other East African immigrants to our country. And I think it's this sense of working together. There's a reason that we rank at the top in healthcare. We rank at the top in personal incomes. We rank near the top in home ownership. We rank near the top in happiness. Because this idea that we're all in it together and that we believe everybody should have a chance. So I think it's an ethos, and it gets into our politics. On the secular side, I believe as an elected official that I shouldn't give a sermon, but I should attempt to live one. And one of our politicians, Paul Wellstone, talked about we all do better and we all do better. And that's what we do. And I know that is true to a certain degree in other states, but I see folks making the claim that, well, you wouldn't have any fraud if you just cut all these programs, if you just zeroed them out. That is true. If we did not provide food for our children, no one would steal from that program. But there would also be a lot of hungry children. And what I'm asking for and acknowledging the accountability, we need to put program integrity in. So I think it's a neighborliness. I think it's a historical point about caring for your own. And I think it's a clear understanding that if your neighbor does better, you're going to do better.
Well, thank you, Governor. And obviously, fraud matters and budgets matter. But what really matters right now in this country are values. And I really appreciate.
You're not going to do better until the illegals do better. Sorry, America. Until the illegals are doing better than you will never prosper. That's what the motherfucker just said. That's what he said. Oh, we take care of everybody. We just care about everybody. And if they don't prosper, we don't prosper. You don't succeed until they do. Weakest link. No child left behind. All that shit. This is what we're doing, America.
You're sharing that. Attorney General Ellison, in the brief time I have, I just want to be clear about Somali Americans, because when I was growing up as an Indian American, anytime someone who was of Indian origin did something wrong, every Indian American was concerned, and I don't think people understand that if you aren't a minority, how that makes you feel. I understand there were 80 or 90 people who were Somali Americans who were involved in this, but there are 100,000 Somali Americans, at least in Minnesota. And statistically, from all the studies I've seen, it is just factually untrue that Somali Minnesotans or Somali Americans commit more fraud than white Americans or Indian Americans or other Americans.
Yes.
And could you just speak to this, because it is so dangerous? And I don't even think on the other side people are doing that on purpose. But if you aren't an immigrant, if you haven't lived that or a child of immigrants, you don't know what that makes you feel. And can you talk about the Somali experience in Minnesota?
The reality is the Somali community in Minnesota has brought great things to our state.
Who cares
They've opened
about
businesses.
the damn
They've gotten
articles
professional
they enter
degrees.
into the record?
They
All it
are
says
great
is,
neighbors who volunteer and help their
we've
neighbors.
been lying
They
this
have
entire
been
time,
a
and
benefit
here's
to our
proof.
state. If you pick out a few people who've done wrong, sure, you can do that. But I can guarantee you can do that in any ethnic group at all in the state of Minnesota or anywhere in America.
Thank you. Thank you both.
All right, before I recognize Mr. Higgins, I'll recognize Mr. Waukesha for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, I just wanted to make a quick correction. You said Secretary Noem is before the Homeland Security Committee today. That's not true. I'm a member of the committee. She was with us a couple months ago, but not scheduled. With that, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a September 22nd, 2025 article from Reuters titled "Trump Aide Homan Accepted $50,000 in Bribery Sting Operation," which shows the Trump administration is willing to cover up blatant corruption of its officials.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Mr. Higgins for Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, ma'am, thank you for being here today. Governor, when you took office, this fraud had already begun. Is that an accurate assessment?
That's accurate.
Walz has a surplus due to committing
so
fraud.
what we're trying to get our
Get
heads
rid of the
wrapped around
fraud,
here
and he will have
as a
deficit.
nation, and,
of course.
and we're doing our best as a committee, I'm quite certain on both sides,
Stealing
to
from
just
everybody will always
sort
give
of
you a surplus.
focus
won't it?
our attention on what needs to be focused on. You had massive fraud in the state of Minnesota. And when we started looking into waste, fraud, abuse, and theft across the country, Minnesota surfaced as a wow moment for the entire country. So naturally, we look as a citizenry to, well, who's in charge there? And my old friend, Governor Walz, is in charge. And the truth is fraud had begun before you took office. So it's a reasonable question,
A free
Governor.
one-way trip to his
Well,
favorite
you
place.
noted in many
Communist
interviews, I'm not going to go through them ad nauseum. You were aware of this level of fraud and investigations, and yet it seems like nothing was done until the
think I
Trump
should pay for him,
administration reestablished itself in a second term, and we began broad
I'm sorry.
investigations into waste, fraud, abuse,
You
and theft.
stole from me.
And Minnesota popped. So
You've been stealing from
would you,
me
would
for
you please?
years,
I just
and
give
you've
you
allowed it
a
to
minute
happen.
to respond.
Yeah.
Why
It needs to
didn't
be
you do
worse
something
than just
sooner? I
get
know
the
some
fuck
people were
out
put in
the
jail.
country.
I know there were investigations, but there was billions and billions and billions of dollars being stolen from a pretty concentrated demographic
Yeah,
in
I
your
do
community.
remember when it
And
was
this
INS.
demographic is
That
a
was back
significant
in-
political supporter
but
for
that was
you and your
before
party, good
Obama.
sir. So I
Hey.
just ask you, please explain.
Yeah, that was before Obama, right? They just changed INS. I remember it being INS, but then again, nothing happens before Obama anyways, so yeah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Higgins, and I appreciate your question in good faith on this. First of all, the issue of billions, and I'll keep saying this, $1 is too many. That number got thrown around. There's nothing behind it, but I will acknowledge $1 is too much. I will also note the characterization.
I would say it's slow. I would say it's slow, but continue.
Well, there's nothing to support that, but look, we will pursue it and assume that that's the case. We will still make the changes we need to make. The characterization that nothing happened until the Trump administration came in is simply not true. We worked with them in the first administration where USDA didn't take action, and I think that's documented. The fact is, starting in 2019, I went to the legislature asking
But you
for...
didn't pause payments, Governor.
The pausing payments...
And the criminal investigation, which I'm running out of time, I want to jump to. The way America sees this, Governor Walz, respectfully, sir, is that this money just continued to flow. There was a high awareness of this waste, fraud, abuse, and theft, like organized crime level theft, and it seemed to be slow rolled, and nobody stopped the money from rolling in. And money's gone. It's been remitted overseas.
Right.
Attorney General Ellison, you stated in your opening statement that you sort of stated that your office only has direct jurisdiction over Medicaid fraud. Did you say that in your opening statement? Okay, well, you seem to indicate that you don't have, like, criminal authority, but you do, don't you? Under your own law, you have authority. If the county district attorney asks you to get involved, or if the governor asks you to get involved, then your office can take lead on any criminal investigation, specifically if you have particular staffing and capabilities within your office, because it's statewide, to look into organized crime. Is that not correct? Okay, so you have the authority to lead your state's effort to respond to this massive fraud at the state
2003.
level. From within the healthcare realm,
That was during
where
Bush,
government
then,
money's
right?
been
Yeah.
stolen
Yeah,
at
that was
very,
during Bush.
very high levels, unprecedented levels in your state. Are you leading that
So, yeah,
effort for
it
the state of
happened
Minnesota?
before Obama, so that never was a thing.
You're addressing it. Are you leading it? Are you leading the effort?
We are leading the effort to prosecute Medicaid fraud in Minnesota.
I'm not talking about Medicaid fraud. Don't hide behind that. You have the authority to prosecute anything criminally that the governor asks you to. And this thing is big. I'm giving you an opportunity, sir. Are you leading the criminal investigative effort into this massive fraud across the board in the healthcare spectrum in the state of Minnesota or not?
God damn it, Higgins,
You're
go
not
off.
leading. You're not leading. I'm going to say, Mr. Chairman, that the Attorney General of the state of Minnesota should resign. I yield.
Thank you. Gentleman yields back. Before I recognize Mr. Frost, I want to, Mr. Waukesha, you were right. She's not testifying in Homeland Security. Kristi Noem's testifying in Judiciary. I knew she was here somewhere today, so you were right. I misstated the wrong committee. Chair now recognizes Mr. Frost from Florida.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I have unanimous consent called Fraud Focus. Why is Trump granting clemency to convicted fraudsters?
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you all for being here. The whole world has witnessed unprecedented and extreme immigration enforcement tactics this year in Minnesota. After the murder of Renee Nicole Good and before the murder of Alex Preddy, President Donald Trump posted on Truth Social that, quote, "the day of reckoning and retribution is coming." Governor Walz, the dictionary defines retribution as
This
punishment
stupid
inflicted
niggers.
on someone as vengeance for a wrong or criminal act. Based on what we've seen play out in Minneapolis, what is the problem with the President of the United States directing agents to carry out retribution?
Well, yeah, thank you. And this is certainly troubling because under the guise of fraud, which we all want to tackle, we were subject to, as you saw, the largest invasion of a state by the federal government. I don't know, in certainly any of our lifetimes. And that infliction, to me, we're trying to figure it out. Look, we'll acknowledge, and we're fixing it in Minnesota. I'm telling you, each of you are going to go back to your state, and if some of you think you want to be governor, you're going to deal with this. And these folks keep moving. The problem is, Congressman, this was about retribution. This was about singling out Minnesota. And I think I'm going to just name it. I think it's singling out because our state works and it provides things for people, and we care and we mind our own business and we respect our neighbors. And this retribution had nothing to do with getting the worst of the worst. We know that. It had nothing to do with stopping fraud. And we were subject, we being Minnesotans, for over 10 weeks. And I want to note, just before I'll yield back on this, Congressman, I think it's important to note. The gentleman from Illinois noted that Midway Blitz, the damage it did to Chicago. There were 500 agents on the ground in Chicago. Kristi Noem testified yesterday there's still 650 in Minnesota. It is not over. This is not ancient news. This is not looking like everybody moved on. Minnesotans are still experiencing this.
It's bad for our communities. It makes our people less safe. It's terrorizing our streets.
You're going to cry about it?
Reverend, what has been happening in your community when individuals try to record federal agents?
Thank you for your question. Individuals who have tried to record federal agents have been told they cannot. They have been asked for taken pictures of their license plates. They have been followed. They have been subject to fear intimidation tactics by ICE agents.
And one of the only reasons that really the world knows about what's going on in Minnesota is because of our Constitution and the right to be able to record law enforcement and federal agents. Those videos and the videotapes have been in part the reason why we know what's going on. Trump administration officials have suggested that observing or identifying federal agents is, quote, doxing or, quote, assault. We know federal agents have followed observers to their homes. We know protesters have been pepper sprayed. We know people have been violently detained who were filming them without bystanders having cameras who know how the murders of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy by ICE agents would have been handled by this administration. They have already tried to lie about these murders, even with footage. After Alex Preddy was murdered, Stephen Miller said he was, quote, a domestic terrorist who tried to, quote, assassinate federal law enforcement.
Yes.
Kristi Noem said that he committed an act of domestic terrorism, and the President of the United States said that he was an agitator and perhaps an insurrectionist.
Yes.
Reverend, the last thing I want to get to that I think is really important. I grew up in the church, and I used to wear one of the "What Would Jesus Do" bracelets, mainly because I used to curse a little too much when I was little, and then I would like snap myself when I cursed. Either way, nowadays I think less about what would Jesus do, and I think more about what would happen to Jesus in this country.
Holy
and
shit.
I just wanted to give you a moment to talk about what you think would happen to refugees Mary and Joseph as they come to our border. Would they be separated from their child? I mean, what does this look like?
Such a good point, Congressman.
There's just so much fucking blasphemy going on right here. God damn it. I'm not even religious, but holy shit, y'all are going way too fucking deep with it. Jesus, God. Y'all oh my God. You got Tellerico out there saying that fucking Jesus should have been aborted and it was okay if Mary did it. And now you got this motherfucker saying, oh my God, would Jesus have been turned away at the border? Stop using religion for your fucking shit, because that is a huge goddamn problem. That is a huge motherfucking problem that's pissing off a lot of American people. You motherfuckers are too goddamn dumb to understand when America gets tired of it, you're fucked.
And yes, Jesus was himself a refugee, as were his parents. And yes, I fear that they too would have experienced the harm and cruel treatment that Minnesotans have been experiencing at the hands of our government.
What do you say to the people who hide behind the Bible and wrap themselves in the flag to say that what is going on in our country right now with ICE, terrorizing our communities, ripping our neighbors, ripping families apart? What would you say to people like that?
I think, again, Matthew 25, where are we?
I'm not
in this moment? It
religious,
should be
and I'd
on
say
the
they're
side
right.
of the least, the widow, the orphan, the hungry, the homeless, and that as people of faith and moral conscience, history will tell what side we stood on, but our actions today will show true love of neighbor.
Thank you. I yield back.
Yields back. Before I recognize Ms. Mace, Mr. Grofman, I believe, has a UC.
Yeah, I'd like to submit for the record something here.
Hit the button.
I'd like to submit for the record something called Minnesota Financial and Compliance Report on Federally Assisted Programs for the year ending June 30th, 2024.
Without objection to order. Chair now recognizes Ms. Mace from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for being here today. Governor Walz and Attorney General Ellison, you have presided over one of the worst government fraud scandals in American history. This was money intended to feed hungry children, help kids with autism, provide food and shelter and health care to the needy, and more. You both allowed billions in these American taxpayer dollars to be pillaged and plundered by Somali pirates. You knew this was happening. You chose to do nothing about it, and in some cases, you even enabled it. Attorney General Ellison, you even profited from this fraud by taking campaign donations from these Somalians after pledging to help quash the investigation into them. I find your behavior despicable. My questions this morning, my first go to Governor Walz, and I hope you learned some lessons from your last hearing with me on the Oversight Committee. Have you learned anything?
I did. If I didn't speak up, two of my people would be dead.
Well, my ass would be kicked off.
Governor Walz,
I'd have done
what is a
already
woman?
hurt somebody.
Have you learned that lesson? Do you know what a woman is?
I'm the governor of Minnesota,
Do you know
Congressman.
what a
I'm not
woman
here
is?
to be your prop or your obsession.
So
I
if you
taught
can't
middle school
define
your
what a
obsession.
woman is, you certainly can't define what fraud is. If you can't even define what a woman is, you can't define fraud. How much money was spent on autism in Minnesota in 2017, Governor?
I don't have those numbers in front of me, Congresswoman.
Did you prepare for this hearing today? Did you
I
do
did.
any
I
preparation
take
for this
Congress
hearing today?
seriously.
And you've seen the numbers about autism fraud in Minnesota. So we're going to do some Minnesota math with you today, okay? Are you ready?
Okay.
How much money was spent on 2017 for autism in Minnesota? How much?
I don't know. I wasn't the governor.
Okay. did you not just say that you prepared for this hearing today? $1 million, okay? A quick Google search or using your AI could tell you $1 million was spent. How much money was spent on autism in Minnesota in 2024?
I don't have the number in front of me.
Were you governor in 2024?
I was, but I'm not the
Okay, so your excuse before that you didn't know what 2017 autism numbers were because you were not governor, and today you can't answer the numbers about 2024 as governor, and you still said you prepared for this hearing today. It's unbelievable. $343 million was spent in 2024. What percent increase is that from $1 million to $343 million? What percentage increase is that?
I'm not here to be your prop. Go ahead and tell me.
Are you governor of Minnesota or not?
Yes, I am. I'm not.
Well, when I'm governor of
for a
South
member
Carolina,
Congress.
you can sure as hell bet that I'm going to know the math. The math is 34,200% increase, an increase of 343 times what it was in this time period. Do you know the number of children in Minnesota?
I know that Minnesota ranked as a top 3 state for children
What is the
in the last
total
year.
population in Minnesota?
5.7 million.
Okay. What is the total population?
I will say this, though. Didn't we make fun of Katie Porter for bringing a whiteboard to hearings? Wasn't that a thing? Weren't we doing that? And then here she is bringing a whiteboard to hearings. Like, all right. Come on. What are we doing? What are we doing here, Mace? Holy shit. Oh, God. All right.
Of children in Minnesota.
I don't have the number in front of me right
Are you governor of Minnesota?
I know 400,000 were cut out of healthcare last week by
that's
the
not-
actions you made.
Are you governor of Minnesota?
I am.
And you don't know the number of children residing
I don't
in
have the
Minnesota?
specific number. It's 5.7 million.
That's your total
What is your
population.
age? What is the age?
1.2
0 to 5? 0 to 19?
You have approximately 1.2 million children in Minnesota.
What
I'm not
age?
even governor of South Carolina. Our population in South Carolina is 5.5 million. We have approximately 1.1 million children under the age of 18 in my home state of South Carolina. Okay, as governor, I expect you to know this information. Thank God you're not vice president of the United States. Do you know approximately
thank
how
God.
many children in Minnesota are autistic or on the spectrum?
No, I don't have that number.
Okay, well, if you take the CDC's roughly 1 in 36 kids are on the spectrum, we're talking about approximately 33,000 kids. In South Carolina, it's about 31,000 or so.
I
What
shouldn't
is,
be
do you know what this is
laughing
per
because this
child
is our country,
spending-wise
but God
in the
damn.
fraud for autistic kids in Minnesota?
This is so fucking
Again, I'm not here to be your prop. Go ahead and tell us.
Is doing Minnesota math a prop? This is math. We're talking about fraud.
Minnesota ranks at the top. Where does South Carolina rank?
We're talking about money.
Where does South Carolina children rank on healthiness?
These are my questions for you. It doesn't go the other way around unless we're debating on the debate stage. And we're not.
If you're asking
This
questions
is-
about being governor,
I'm
it does.
asking you
When you're
questions
governor,
about being
you can come
governor of
tell me.
Minnesota, which you can't answer. This is basic
You can't
math.
ask me questions
And you can't even
unless
answer.
you're
Do
a
you care about
governor.
kids in Minnesota?
They rank near the top
Okay.
in every category. My children are
Do you
fed. My
care about
children are
autistic
housed. My
children
children have
getting the
healthcare.
services they need in
My
Minnesota?
children have the best
No,
schools.
you don't. Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Mr. Chairman.
Young lady yields back.
Mr. Chairman.
Who's Ms. Mobert? Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, Mr. Mace.
May I make my two motions?
Proceed.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee issue a subpoena to the Honorable Pamela Jo Bondi to appear before the committee for a deposition regarding the department's handling of the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and his associates and compliance with the Epstein Files Transparency Act.
A motion has been made. The committee will hold this motion in abeyance until the end of today's hearing. The committee will now
Jesus,
proceed with
guys.
today's hearing.
Mr. Chairman.
Here we
I move
go.
that the committee issue a subpoena to the Office of Congressional Workplace Rights for the awards and settlements paid pursuant to Section 415 of the Congressional Accountability Act prior to December 12, 2018, with only redactions allowable for the personally identifiable information of victims, alleged victims, and witnesses. Thank you, ma'am.
A motion has been made. The committee will hold this motion in abeyance until the end of today's hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, can I have one thing before?
Chair recognizes the ranking member.
Thank you. No, we'd just like to see Mrs. Mace's motions in writing, which would be great.
Okay. Now, before I recognize Ms. Lee, do you have Ms. Randall?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a December 11th, 2025 article from The Guardian titled "Somalis Are the Scapegoat. Fear Rises as Trump Targets Minneapolis Community," which describes
Without
the
objection.
administration's xenophobic attacks.
Without objection to order. Chair recognizes Ms. Lee from Pennsylvania.
I want to add
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
an article
For the
that
past
tells
few months, Democrats on this
tells
committee
everybody
and the
that
Senate
you're-
have been
you're
holding
wrong
hearings
and
on the
I'm right,
unconstitutional actions of the
because
Trump
we need to
administration.
keep
So
lying.
we've heard from, in that time, whistleblowers, industry experts, and survivors of abuses of federal agents. They spoke about warrantless searches that they have been subjected to, including federal agents
How is
bursting
this
into
gonna
their
be
homes with
racist?
guns. They spoke about being shot at and dragged out of their cars, and then, being made to look like they were actually the perpetrators. They spoke about federal agents' use of masks in unmarked vehicles, and the efforts of these agents to hide their identity to escape any sort of accountability. And we heard from the brother of Renee Good, who was murdered by ICE agents in Minneapolis. That is what oversight looks like. Not 2 hearings on fraud in 1 single state, which is not even the worst instance of fraud out there, though we all here agree that we should target fraud. Republicans have dragged Governor Walz in, again, to demonize and target his state because he is a Democratic governor and he is implementing Democratic policies. Republicans took a legitimate investigation and, as per usual, has made it a circus. Now we have just a random guy lurking around child care centers trying to get into buildings with children as the fraud vigilante. The Somali community has been vilified and made to feel unsafe. And federal benefits are being cut to Minnesota and other Democrat-led states. Trump and his administration also use this investigation as a justification for an immigration enforcement push that has created chaos and fueled violence and resulted in the death of American citizens. Reverend Tolgard, as a Minnesotan, do you feel that these oversight hearings and the Trump administration's fixation on fraud in Minnesota has made anyone safer in your state?
No, they have not.
Republicans have been touting alleged fraud in child care centers and the need to protect children. But since the immigration enforcement push, have kids been able to be kids? Have they felt comfortable going to school or playing out in public with each other or with their friends?
They have not been safe. They've not been able to go to school, to be in playgrounds, to be in libraries and places you would normally expect to find them.
What now?
Are you worried about the long-term impact of being surrounded by violence and uncertainty, what it could have on these children?
I'm deeply concerned about that, and I know that their teachers and their parents are as well.
You were arrested earlier this year while protesting ICE agents and deportations. Why was it important for you and other clergy members to speak out against Trump's administration's actions in Minnesota and elsewhere?
Thank you for your question.
Because he's an evil
was
orange
arrested
man.
along with 99 other faith leaders in Minnesota, many of whom could be here today, and we were compelled to action to stand on the side of the most vulnerable in our communities and those who have been facing enormous cruelty and unfair actions on the hands of ICE, and we needed to stand alongside them, as have many others in our faith traditions in history. We stand along with that great cloud of witnesses.
That
I want to
was
thank
a
you
lot
for
of
coming in
words to
today
say.
and for having the courage to stand
Absolutely,
up
fucking nothing.
to the attacks against your community. This, as we can all see, was never truly about fraud. It is a part of a greater effort by Trump and Republicans to gut social services, roll back civil rights, to villainize and make others out of people who they don't want to have and enjoy
Holy
the same civil
shit.
liberties and rights as others in this nation. They
It's
want to strip
about to
away
get
and have been
racist.
stripping away healthcare and education, childcare funding that millions of people rely on. This investigation and these actions have only been used to harm, not to help people. And rest assured, this will not stop in Minnesota, just as it didn't stop in Chicago before that or LA before that. This is a blatant attempt, blatant authoritarian grab that the Trump administration has been persistent in. It will come to all shores if we do not all take a collective stance. But more than that, urging my colleagues in the Republican caucus or conference to take up their job and their task as a co-equal branch of government. We do not serve as the lapdogs, as the cold followers of Donald Trump, of a president. When there are abuses or overreach, it is supposed to be us that takes a stand. And I would hope that at some point in the 119th Congress, some Republican with a gavel will do so. I thank you all for your time, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now
Holy
recognizes
shit, there wasn't
Mr. Donalds
anything
from
really
Florida.
about race.
Thank you, Chairman. Governor
there
Walz,
was,
when did you
but-
first receive notice of potential fraud in Minnesota's social services programs?
Social service programs in general. We knew that there was issues with the CCAP program as early as 2012. And my first days in office, we started taking action.
But as governor, when were you first notified?
Before I took office.
All right, Governor Walz, former Department of Human Services Commissioner Tony Laurie testified that you were aware in early 2019 of fraud in two Department of Human
Fear-mongering
Services
kids should be a crime.
administered programs. Is
It's
this
a
statement
danger,
accurate?
right?
Not that I recall. I'm not sure what he's speaking about.
You don't remember this meeting or this
Yeah,
notification?
right.
No, not specifically. I don't.
In March of 2019,
Good
your
point.
Office of
Good
Legal
point.
Affairs reported $5 to $6 million in alleged child care assistance program fraud. In April 2019, it was also reported that the Department of Human Services lacked proper integrity controls to control fraud. Were you aware of these reports?
Not specific reports, but because of that, my office, we put forward actions to address them, starting in 2019.
Is it correct that your administration was aware of the Feeding Our Future fraud as early as of May of 2020, based upon regular discussions about program irregularities?
I believe that's correct with the agency, the Department of Education, and then going back to USDA.
I'm gonna go back. Was your office notified of these fraud allegations?
Not me specifically, that they're handled internally in the administration. It happens every day.
Who was notified, Governor Walz?
The agencies do their work, the commissioners, and then if someone in my office was notified, they let me know. As governor, I make 50 decisions a day. I said I did this job for 12 years. I make more decisions in a day.
Governor Walz.
So someone was maybe
As a
notified, but
Christian,
the
this
agency the
pastor
one
is
May I
gonna
ask
have
the next
to
question?
answer to
We have it
Jesus
under
because she is
sworn
breaking so
testimony
many
in the
of the
Oversight
rules.
Committee
She
that your
doesn't-
former chief of
she's not a
staff was
believer.
notified directly by these various commissioners about the
She's
fraud
less of a
in Minnesota.
believer than
So
I
are you
am.
saying that your chief of staff didn't notify you?
I'm saying I don't recall whether he did at that time or not, but we took action. So I'm assuming when we put our budgets together, based on that, we put a package together for that legislative
Let's
session.
talk about budgets, Governor Walz. Feeding Our Future went from $307,000 in 2018 to $199 million in 2021. Are you aware of this increase in budgetary costs from Feeding Our Future?
Not specifically, but I know it increased during the pandemic.
The Housing Stabilization Services went from $27 million in 2021 to $105 million in 2024. Are you aware of this increase, Governor Walz?
Not specifically, but I know it increased.
Autism centers went from $24 million in 2019 to $342 million in 2024. Are you aware of that?
Not specifically again, but yes, we know the budget's increased.
Integrated community supports went from $4.6 million in 2021 to $170 million in 2024. Are you aware of that?
Again, not specifically on the numbers, but it's the budget.
Governor Walz, you have to submit a budget to your legislature every single year, like every governor
don't
has to
know
do. If
what's
you're not
on
aware
your
of these increases,
budget.
what was your
Every
office
one
budget?
bounds. My budget is about $72 billion. It includes 23 agencies.
Florida's budget is
150
$115 billion, sir. But what were you doing if you're seeing program increases like this amid allegations of fraud in your state?
Action was being taken on these starting back in 2019. If it's CCAP.
Can you describe the action that was taken in 2019?
Sure. In the 2019, I'll go to the first things that we did on child care assistance. We lowered the standards on proof of administrative fraud disqualification.
Whoa, you lowered the
increased it.
standards?
We lowered the standards for proof of administrative fraud. The standards where we had to prove it were so high it was impossible to try and do it. So we lowered what it took to show that fraud was happening.
And what did you do with the results of lowering the standards to prove fraud? What did you do?
Put 79 people in prison and.
But Governor Walz, your fraud continued to increase.
Yeah, it did.
It increased under your tenure. Do you acknowledge that?
Did
No.
the numbers increase? Yes. And I tell you, when you catch people and prosecute them, it shows up at the fraud increase. I would tell you, Congressman,
But
just because you're not hearing about
increases,
fraud doesn't
well,
mean it's
I
not
got 50
happening.
seconds, Governor, and I don't want to get into a fight with you, but let me move quickly to the Lieutenant Governor. Peggy Flanagan's your Lieutenant Governor. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Does the Lieutenant Governor go on the ticket with you, or are they elected by themselves on a ballot in the state of Minnesota?
It's on a ticket.
It's on a ticket. Peggy Flanagan essentially works for you.
She has an independent office. She's a constitutional officer. She's on the ticket, but she is independent as a constitutional
You
officer.
could ask for her resignation at any time. Is that correct? That's typically how it works with lieutenant governors.
Yeah, but she's a constitutional officer. I don't believe that's happened in Minnesota.
Peggy Flanagan is, there are accusations that she was intimidating whistleblowers. There was a meeting on April 12th of 2024 where she went on stage and publicly denounced whistleblowers in the state of Minnesota, calling them losers in their mother's basements. Is this the type of treatment that your administration allows for whistleblowers in Minnesota?
I'm not familiar
Are
with
you
that.
aware of any intimidation of whistleblowers in the state of Minnesota?
it's
There are
not.
30 whistleblowers who have given letters to this committee on the record saying that they have been subject to intimidation by your administration because they were trying to stop the fraud in Minnesota.
I encourage them to go to the OLA and the independent sources in Minnesota that are.
The OLA, you're the governor.
No, the OLA is the independent.
But sir,
office of
you're the
legislative
governor.
audit.
Why don't you take responsibility for what's going on in your state?
We do take responsibility. None of those people. I'm telling you, I have no
But
knowledge.
you
of
lost
what we
billions of dollars of American taxpayer money in the process, Governor Walz.
We prosecuted these people, Congressman. I think Florida has fraud.
I would argue that the prosecutions have largely come
Oh
from
my
the federal
God.
offices
That's
as
not how
opposed to
this
the state
works.
offices.
You know that we refer
What
them
do you
to
mean
them.
that's not how it works? That's
They're
exactly
partners.
how it works.
They're partners. They partner together at BCA.
Is the Attorney General allowed to investigate fraud and prosecute fraud in the state of Minnesota without the Department of Justice federally? Are you allowed to do that, Attorney General Ellison?
Yes, and we do prosecute Medicaid. Yes, and we do prosecute Medicaid fraud all the time. We've prosecuted over 300 people.
Look at all the fraud in your state. Why are you not prosecuting? Florida has fraud. So why are you not prosecuting? You mean to tell me you're not prosecuting the fraud in your state because Florida has fraud? What kind of retard shit is this?
Apparently not enough, because Minnesota's rife with it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Randall from Washington State.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Governor Walz, Attorney General Ellison, and Reverend Tolgard, for being here to shed light on the impacts of the Trump administration's harmful actions in Minnesota, and frankly, to be pulled into some really ridiculous question lines. The escalation
These
in attacks from this
numbers are
administration
insane.
on
They
social services programs in democratically led states like Minnesota, on the heels of the big ugly law's billions of dollars of Medicaid cuts last summer, is clearly devastating our
How do you have
communities.
30 whistleblowers go to
Do
the
I believe
Oversight
Congress has a
Committee
responsibility
because
to
they
reduce
can't
opportunities for misuse and fraud
report
where
to
we
their
have seen evidence that it
supervisors?
exists? Sure. That's
Because
why
if
I
you
introduced
say
the Federal
anything,
Program
your ass
Integrity
is
and Fraud
punished.
Prevention Act, a bipartisan bill that would prevent individuals who have been convicted of fraud from applying for federal contracts. Mr. Chairman, if you are serious about addressing fraud, I'd love to see this committee hold a hearing on my bill, which was developed based on feedback from nonpartisan inspectors general, whose entire job is overseeing the appropriate administration of government programs. And let me remind my friends on the other side about Mississippi, a state with Republican leadership where over $77 million in temporary assistance for needy families funds were misused. One of the perpetrators of that fraud, former NFL quarterback Brett Favre, who received $1.1 million from the government for speeches he never made. Congressional Republicans' response was to invite Favre to come testify before the Ways and Means Committee about how we should strengthen oversight of federal welfare programs.
You'd be
Because I'm sure he had some
investigating
good advice
people
about
of
that.
faith?
Meanwhile, my
I
Republican
don't
colleagues are
think that would
villainizing
look good,
entire
though,
minority
Miss
populations
Bud.
because of the actions of a few. We have a word for that. I also have a lot of Republican colleagues here who talk about being fiscally responsible and reining in federal spending. Again, I also believe we should be fiscally responsible. But to me, fiscal responsible governing means that we invest in transformative universal health care that saves us money in the long term. Childcare policies that give the budget back $7 on the dollar spent in long-term costs for the children who benefit. Policies that will actually save our country money in the long run and contribute to strong society and strong economy. Not slashing social services, not defunding hospitals, not eliminating childcare programs. Governor Walz, why do you think the Trump administration is so obsessed with fraud in Minnesota when its own agencies have found other states with even worse problems?
Well, it's a question we're all asking, Congresswoman, and I'd like to say, and thank you for this, I just want to make sure I go on record, Chairman Comer, in condemning the slurs towards my Somali community that the gentlewoman from South Carolina made. Thank you. Look, Congress, I don't know. I think it's been pretty clear the president does not like me personally.
I want to go on record
I
and
think he
say
continues to tell
I
lies
don't
about our
like
electoral
the
system,
fact
claiming that
you
he's won
said
all three
something
times when he's
bad
lost all three
about
times.
people.
I think he has people around him who were trying to find quotas around immigration, and they saw a perfect storm, if you will, that included some Somali folks and a whole lot, if we're going to condemn folks, there's no Somali folks in the Epstein files, things like that, we know. But I don't know. It's an obsession, and I come back to it again. I think it's because we are so ideologically opposed to making children go hungry, people go unhoused. We invest in education, we invest in research, and we believe everybody has a place. And so I think it's just personal about how we do business.
Thank you so much. I could not agree more.
It's
there are
personal
also
about how
reports that
you
as
do
many as
business.
50 prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office from Minnesota have quit in the
dollars
last
to
12
enrich
months.
yourselves.
They used to have 70 prosecutors. Now some
the
reports
fuck are
say
you
they have as
talking
few as
about?
17.
Yeah, that's
Many of those
personal,
who
you
left
stupid
include the very
asshole.
same prosecutors who were prosecuting the Feeding Our Futures fraudsters. How has this flight impacted your efforts to fight fraud in Minnesota?
Well, it's made it very difficult. And I think for all of my friends on the Republican side, we welcomed the Republican folks, the attorneys over at the U.S. Attorney's Office who were good at helping us as partners. We turned this over to them. They prosecute, they put people in jail. They're not there now. There's nobody doing this. And I will remind this committee, the U.S. attorney was in front of a federal judge yesterday being threatened with jail because of what's going on in that office. And from my perspective, who's prosecuting trafficking, drugs, murder, and fraud? And so we want them. If you could do anything, Chairman, call the president and tell him to put some U.S. attorneys over there to prosecute fraud. I'll sign on with you.
Thank you, Governor. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair now recognizes Chairman Burchett from Tennessee.
Say that with disrespect in your voice, Mr. Chairman. Governor, you mentioned that President Trump lost all 3 times. I believe that's an error, and that's a conspiracy theorist. I believe you spoke in error there, but
no, he lost Minnesota all 3 times.
Okay. I'm glad you corrected that.
He doesn't agree with that.
I don't care. We're good. Have you ever used taxpayer funds directly or indirectly to take action against individuals suspected of disclosing potential wrongdoing within a government entity?
I have not.
Well, almost 30 whistleblowers accuse you and your administration of retaliation. Would you say that's a conspiracy then?
I can't speak to what they said. I can tell you it didn't happen.
Okay. Are you aware of reports alleging state officials have engaged in retaliation against whistleblowers?
No, I'm not. Not specifically, no.
You're not aware of that when 30 have come forward? Okay.
I am not. I believe these are okay. Internet. We have options. The OLA, we have independent folks that they can come to, and I encourage them. It's against the law in Minnesota. I have executive orders.
It's against the law here, but it doesn't stop it. What actions have you taken to protect whistleblowers in your state, sir? Does anyone face consequences for retaliation? If so, who?
Well, in Minnesota, we have nonpartisan office of legislative auditor. We have zero tolerance. The Minnesota Whistleblower Protection Act prohibits retaliation. I signed executive order in 2025, added protections. The law explains and clarifies protections around what reports are protected and who can report issues. They're strong. When I was here, I was an advocate for the IGs, and I think that's well known in my 12 years here that we need them.
Okay. Well, a whistleblower told our office that our supervisor at the Minnesota Department of Health and Human Services threatened to make her job difficult.
Yeah,
and the supervisor that did that later received a promotion. Would that surprise you? And can you confirm if this account is accurate?
No, I can't confirm it, and I don't make HR decisions. But when I'm being very clear about this, there's a zero tolerance for whistleblower retaliation.
Profits. Yeah,
can you, how can any agency combat fraud when retaliation goes unchecked?
Going through somebody like that,
it makes it more difficult. That's why we don't allow it.
Do you think that any of the fraudsters sent stolen funds to Somali?
I don't know how I would feel about that without,
pardon me,
massive.
Do you think that any of the Somali folks that received funds sent any of that money to any of the stolen funds to Somali terrorist groups?
There's been reports done and investigations done on this, and I don't believe there's any proof to support that.
Okay. Mr. Attorney General, do you recall a December 2021 meeting with individuals connected to Feeding Our Future, during which you stated there will be cases that I want you to feel free to call me directly, and then I call up and what's the problem? Let me tell you, just letting the inquiry from AG is sometimes enough to make people knock it off.
Congressman, yeah, I was at a meeting like that. Let me just say that I've reported on this numerous times. I've been in front of a committee in the Senate. I'm here today. I was in front of a state House committee. This is a widely discussed matter, and I've been fully transparent. But let me just be clear. These people were fraudsters, as everyone here agrees. They were liars. They lied to me. They lied to courts. They lie to everyone. And I would like you to know that I do meet with community meetings all the time. I mean, it's a regular part of my job. Nothing unusual about me meeting with people. Nothing unusual about me telling people if you got a problem, my office will try to help you. But these people were liars and fraudsters. Okay. The main thing is I'd like you to know is that we're down so many federal prosecutors that it has put our ability to hold these people accountable definitely at a loss.
Yes, sir. 8-hour days do get long. In September of 2022, you issued a press release titled, "For 2 years, Attorney General Ellison's office has held Feeding Our Future accountable." Does that sound familiar?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. Let me tell you, the Department of Education...
Does it sound familiar or not, sir?
It certainly does. And the Department of
How much did you receive in campaign contributions from individuals charged in the Feeding Our Future case?
Every campaign donation I got was returned to all authorities.
Okay. Everybody knows about the $250 million in fraud for Feeding Our Future case, which was prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota. But there were just 2 other large site sponsors that you settled with instead of prosecuting them. Why did you not prosecute Partners in Quality Care or the Gar Family Services?
Because my office doesn't have jurisdiction to prosecute in those cases.
Well, you allowed them to dissolve, but no one was prosecuted. And PIQC is accused of $300 million in fraud as significant assets, yet no charges and no attempts to recover taxpayer money. I'll remind y'all, $19 billion. I was a state legislator, and I can remember when our state budget was $19 billion. This is money that's been stolen, and it will not be recovered, and you all are to blame, and every dadgum one of you all ought to step down. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
He's right.
Gentleman yields back. Before I recognize Mr. Bell, Mr. Donald, do you have a UC?
Yeah, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an op-ed from the Minnesota Star Tribune, authored by Jim Nobles, the former Minnesota legislative auditor, dated December 29th, 2025.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair recognizes Mr. Bell from St. Louis.
Thank you, Chair, Ranking Member, and our witnesses for being here today. My Republican colleagues have called this hearing today once again to divert the public's attention from the dangerous threats that they themselves have created for the American people. They have chosen to turn a blind eye to the escalating public safety crisis in Minneapolis, Minnesota, fueled by the deployment of ICE agents under the direction of President Trump. On December 1st, 2025, this administration launched Operation Metro Surge under the false pretense of promoting public safety in Minneapolis. Since then, we have witnessed several deaths, including the brutal killings of Renee Good on January 7th, 2026, and Alex Preddy only a few short weeks later on January 24th. News reports state that in 2026 alone, there have already been 8 additional deaths at the hands of federal agents. We are now living in one of the deadliest periods on record, with more deaths carried out by ICE agents in recent years than at any time since 2004.
Well, stop trying to kill
Under this
them.
administration's direction, masked agents have inflicted trauma that will remain in these communities and neighborhoods. There's a lack of accountability and justice. Survivor stories have been suppressed. False narratives have been told, and federal officials have refused to cooperate, even going so far as to block state investigators from accessing evidence. A.G. Ellison, as the chief legal officer for the state of Minnesota, what level of cooperation would you expect from the federal government during an investigation of this magnitude?
Congressman, I would expect the kind of cooperation that we're used to experiencing. I mean, in all of the time that I've even been a lawyer, which is now 36 years, state-federal cooperation was exactly how we did business all the time. We are very proud and love working with our FBI agents, DEA agents, ATF agents. It's a regular thing. This is what's strange and unusual.
And has the lack of cooperation and unclear communication from the federal agencies undermined the investigations into the death of Renee Good and Alex Preddy?
It certainly has. We have been denied access to critical evidence in this case that we would need to evaluate this matter based on use of force analysis.
Which is befuddling to me because as a former prosecutor, I've led serious and thorough investigations in pursuit of justice. I can say that what we have seen by DHS, DOJ, and the FBI is the complete opposite of a detailed and thorough investigation into the wrongdoing of ICE officials. And let us be clear, despite what President Trump would have the public believe, those agents remain on the streets of Minnesota. These actions are not isolated incidents. We've seen similar events taking place across the nation in Illinois, North Carolina, California, to name a few. We have heard directly from survivors about the cruelty and mistreatment they endured by ICE agents, and we have seen the individuals appointed under President Trump to head these operations evade justice and not be held accountable for their actions. We can't stand by and allow this to continue. Those responsible for these actions must be held accountable, and survivors and their families deserve answers and justice. Which is why, Mr. Chair, I move that pursuant to Clause 2, subsection K6 of House Rule 11, the committee shall subpoena Greg Bovino to testify before the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform.
Oh, my God.
Motion has been made. The committee will hold this motion in abeyance until the end of today's hearing. The committee will now proceed with today's hearing.
I yield the remainder of my time to the ranking member.
I'd like just to provide us a few of that time to our representative who wanted to make some additional comments about something that was said earlier in the hearing. You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. Just following up on Matthew 25, I am so proud of the countless ways that Minnesotans, Christians, and people of other faiths and moral conscience have stepped forward to show love of neighbor and to come alongside those who are suffering most in this time. There is no greater example of living out the teachings of Christ and caring for the least among us than what we've seen in Minnesota these past few months.
Thank you. Yield back.
Gentlemen, yield back. Before I recognize Mr. Perry, I have unanimous consent to enter into the record an article from Alpha News where U.S. Attorney Rosen stated, and I quote, "We have more than adequate staffing to carry out the fraud. We have been reinforced in dramatic numbers by the Department of Justice and by other departments of the federal government." He also said fraud investigations are increasing in pace. Fraud prosecutions, you will see, are going to be dramatically increasing in pace. According to Rosen, if you're committing fraud in the state of Minnesota, it's really not a good time to be doing so. Just wanted to enter that article in the record without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Mr. Perry from Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Governor, good to see you again. You're an Army guy. I'm an Army guy. What's, as governor, one of your primary responsibilities? Keep your citizens safe, right? I think we could probably agree on that. We might not agree on much, but we could probably agree on that. And I heard you talk earlier about working with federal partners. Now, there's a lot been discussed here about fraud of various kinds, but I want to talk about something that seems to me, quite honestly, a dereliction of duty, or certainly a huge lapse in judgment. And you were governor in October of 2023, right? I just want to make sure we're on the same page here. And you signed the Minnesota Driver's Licenses for All Act. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct, right? So now, look, I'm not going to hold you to knowing every single thing in these laws. There's a lot of paragraphs and wording and so on and so forth. But under your law that you signed, it prohibits the disclosure of information contained in the license or identification card applications for enforcing Title 8 of the United States Code. Just to make sure, are you familiar with what Title 8 deals with?
I'm not specifically.
Okay, so it deals with immigration, nationality, and aliens. Particularly, the law that you signed eliminates the requirement for Social Security numbers or proof of lawful presence. And furthermore, it's a violation under Section 14.4 of your code for anybody to research that. As a matter of fact, immigration status is classified as private under Section 13.18. So literally, the federal government, your partner, as you said, we work with our federal partners, can't use that driver's license information regarding people that are here illegally. Now,
I don't understand the connection between the driver's license and the immigration piece, I guess.
Well, they can't, what? Because, well, let me make the connection for you. According to the Secretary of Transportation, one-third of Minnesota's non-domiciled commercial driver's licenses were issued illegally. Do you have a video ready to play for me? Can you play it now? This is what happens, Mr. Governor. This is what happens when you issue driver's licenses to people illegally.
He is on the northbound lanes of 61, going the wrong way. You can see I'm going southbound on 61. He's in the northbound lanes on Highway 61.
I crossing over there, and thank God, I don't know how much that thing weighs, 60, 80,000 pounds, 60 miles an hour.
Are you seriously not going to put it on the screen?
He was licensed in your state under a law that you signed that precludes federal officials, your federal partners, as you call them, from determining whether they're here illegally. That guy that was driving that truck couldn't pass the test. He didn't pass the test out on the road. There's another video, I'm not going to play it, but there's another video of a guy here illegally turning a truck like that around in the middle of a highway where people lost their lives because they were decapitated when they went underneath it. That's what happened. So my question for you is, this should be easy. Yeah. What are you going to do to rectify the law that you signed that allows people here illegally to get a CDL? That tape was in Missouri, not in your state. Look, if you don't want to protect the people in your state, I guess that's your business and the business of your voters. But that driver was driving in Missouri. And if he'd have hit a bunch of people, quite honestly, to me, you could have been held liable.
Yeah. Well, Congressman, first of all, Minnesota ranks in the top 3 safest states by highway data from your own department.
Oh, my God.
The data from the Department of Transportation for highway safety. We have the 3rd. We want everybody on our roads to be licensed.
So are you saying based on that
everybody
that you're okay?
on the road
I'm not
to
okay
be
with that.
licensed.
I'm not okay with you or I speeding. I'm not okay with DUIs.
But you signed this law that allows for that.
Everybody's got to be licensed.
You signed it, and you're going to do nothing about it?
I can't speak to the specific on the CDL. What I can tell you is
I can. I referenced your law. It says House of Representatives, State of Minnesota. And I know there's a lot of words here, but I referenced exactly the sections that allow for this to happen and preclude federal enforcement regarding immigration and the illegality of people receiving CDLs under your state's
driver
provisions.
Safety and immigration are 2 separate things. Anybody, had that been a citizen or not, it's still tragic, it's wrong, we shouldn't do it. What I'm telling you is in Minnesota, we have the 3rd safest roads in the country.
So you're good. So you're good with this practice.
I'm not good with that.
Well, what are you good with? Because that's what's happening under your law.
Well, I can't speak to the specific on if it's an outlier. We give license to people who then eventually people get DUIs after we issue
That happened last month. This is March. That happened a week and a half ago.
Yeah,
Are you familiar?
That's wrong. And look,
but you're not going to do anything.
Sure, we're going to do.
What are you going to do?
Traffic laws.
What are we going to do?
Was this person arrested?
I sure hope so.
Well, that's good.
And but he was licensed in your state under your law that you signed about a year and a half ago.
Every day we give licenses and people speed, so we ticket them and try and stop that. What I'm telling you is I don't understand the connection between.
He's here illegally. He can't read, and he got a license under your provisions, and he's driving all across the country, imperiling everybody else. That's the connection.
I can't speak.
Thank you.
The data shows Minnesota is one of the safest driving states in the country. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Chair now recognize Mr. Min from California.
I'm first, sir.
Oh, you're next. Okay.
Is that okay, sir?
I didn't have it on the list, but
Oh, I should have
I will
after.
yield to the ranking member.
You can go ahead. I don't care.
You sure? Okay.
You can go ahead. I'll let
Who's
him go.
next?
I was tardy. I thank you, Mr. Min. I thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, and thank you, witnesses, for coming today. So what I've heard so far is feeding our future, $250 million stolen, 50 convictions secured, the prosecution was working. Then the administration froze $10 billion in child care across 5 states. No evidence, no legal authority, no statutory process. A federal court ruled it unlawful and unconstitutional within 48 hours. Thank you, Attorney General Ellison and Attorney General Bonta, for that work. Then the lead prosecutor resigned. His team followed. Those prosecutions are now at risk. So the record shows they froze $10 billion illegally, lost in court immediately, and dismantled the prosecution, actually putting fraudsters in prison. Every single action made the fraud worse. This isn't incompetence, because incompetence
He's making
is random.
money off the top.
This was targeted, legally defective, and prosecutorially catastrophic. If this committee was serious about fraud, the first witness should have been the HHS official who sent the letter, not the Attorney General who beat them in court. Attorney General Ellison, what are we doing here? And I want actually to ask you, what is your office doing
but everybody's got to be
systemically
licensed
to prosecute fraud in the state?
Well, thank you for the question, Congresswoman. As
So
I said,
even if they can't
prosecuting
drive,
Medicaid fraud
even
is a
if they
very
don't
important
pass
work
that
that we do.
test,
We do it every single day. We've
they
secured
still gotta be
millions of
licensed.
dollars for people. We've gotten millions in restitution. We've convicted people and held them accountable. We also represent state agencies and help those agencies support the work that they do.
Wait a minute.
The fact of the matter is that we.
Wait a minute. Doesn't Minnesota? Does Minnesota do auto register when license is issued? Auto voter. Yes, Minnesota has automatic voter registration when eligible residents apply for or renew a driver's license. Everybody must have a license. Everybody must have a license. There you go. Holy fuck. Okay.
This work we do to stop fraud is helping to protect.
Oh, by the way, I've also thought about this too, because we've said a lot here. You know, The HAVV data. Here it is. We've shown you this before. The HAVV data, right? What if this is finding the information so when they register somebody who's here illegally to have an ID, or somebody who shouldn't be able to vote, or somebody who shouldn't be able to have an ID or anything like that? Any kind of legal documentation from us? What if they're using this information? This is first time new registered voters. What if this is the information that they were using to try and get that information to put on their registration? Fucked up, ain't it?
Public money. We're proud of it. And we also support federal prosecutions by
According to
providing them with
Broncos,
information if they
politicians
need to
allow
prosecute
illegals
fraud,
to kill
which we have
people.
done and will, so, of course,
They
continue.
too can be
So tell me this,
executed.
how has the ability to prosecute that fraud and social services programs been affected by this administration?
Well, it has been devastated by the actions of this administration. This administration has cut the number of
they need to
prosecutors,
be.
but also has redirected FBI agents to do immigration as opposed to.
Why have they cut those prosecutors?
Those prosecutors actually, I said cut, but they actually resigned as a matter of conscience
No
because
way,
the
she was
administration
laid up
tried to
those
force them to
stereotypes.
investigate the widow of Renee Good.
Say more.
So many of them said that they couldn't work under those circumstances because it violated
Dude,
their ethical,
no,
their personal ethical requirements. So they quit.
So they left their.
That's Latifah Simon. That's the one I was talking about where her eye is like literally 2-3 inches lower on one side. I mean, physically, it's 100% noticeable. The glasses are straining her neck. They have to be because, God damn it, she can't see.
Job that they had sworn to do en masse because they were conflicted with conscience.
That's right. And may I add, Congresswoman, that we have had motions to dismiss for the violation of a defendant's right to a speedy trial granted by judges in Minnesota because there's not enough federal prosecutors. And one of those was a person who was a violent offender who was being prosecuted for felon in possession of a firearm. Case was dismissed because there are not enough people to perform the functions of prosecuting people who commit crimes. So this is having a devastating effect on our state. And in addition to all that, Congresswoman.
Well, so let me get this straight. Help me understand. 50 convictions secured.
We can't do that. You're
Additional
retarded.
prosecutions in limbo. The administration's prosecutors have quit because the staging of how this all works, they believe, and they have said on record, is immoral. Why are we here?
I've been wondering that, Madam.
Because aren't you saying that you would love for the prosecutions that are dangling in the wind, you would love for those folks to face justice?
Absolutely. Stealing public
So
money
the
is
ask would
repugnant.
be then to the administration for what? With this committee here, I think your colleague, or the governor of your great state, said you want more federal prosecutors on this case.
Yes, but we should go back to the Hippocratic Oath of do no harm. I mean, it would be good to just stop doing things that shouldn't be done, such as demanding that prosecutors investigate Renee Good's widow.
Right. That's right. Well, I want to thank you all so much for coming today. And to the Reverend, I was able to come to your state briefly. And like one of my colleagues said, I did go by the site of Ms. Good's death, and it was
and holding her to
heartening to
account
see
for
the
that
solidarity
shit?
in your community. There were about
We
150
can't do that, America.
Christians reciting the Lord's Prayer over and over and over. You all are showing us what good really means. Thank you so much for being here today. And I'll yield back.
Get a lady yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Crane from Arizona.
Interesting.
Thank
how
you,
that
Mr. Chairman.
works.
Thank you to our guests for coming today. I want to start with you, Attorney General Ellison. In an interview with CNN host Laura Coates, she asked you about whether or not you did enough to stop the fraud. Do you remember that interview, Attorney General?
Congressman, I got to admit that I don't remember the details.
Can we play the video, please, to refresh Mr. Ellison's memory?
Are we ready to? It may take us a second on that. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll just tell you what you said when she asked you if you'd done enough to stop the fraud, and she mentioned the $9 billion. You said, "Of course we have done enough. We're doing more every single day. This is a political matter. This is not a serious thing." Do you remember saying that, Attorney General Ellison?
I remember the conversation. What I remember was that I was lamenting the politicized nature of this very serious problem.
You said it's not a serious thing. So now you're saying
fraud is a serious thing.
Okay, well that's not
Politicizing
what
fraud
you
is
said
not
on
a serious
CNN, Mr. Ellison. You said this is a political matter, and this is a quote. This is not a serious thing. So I notice you're changing your tune now that you're before the House Oversight Committee.
I would have
Do you
to
understand, Mr. Attorney General, why this adds gasoline to the fire when Americans are so frustrated with this government for their out-of-control spending and the amount of money they pay in taxes, and then to see $9 billion of it, an estimate of $9 billion getting stolen of their taxpayer dollars and being used to fund cars and vacations and homes and even fund terrorism? Do you understand how statements like that throw gasoline on the fire, sir?
Congressman, I believe that you are mischaracterizing what I said.
No, I actually read you the quote. I'm not going to
Mr. Crane, that
mischaracterize it at
video
all.
is ready if you still want it. It's up to you.
Yeah, let's play it, please.
Is that there has been hundreds of millions of dollars, but now there are some estimates that there could be $9 billion or more. And Noam is just suggesting they took hundreds of people off the street who were involved in fraud. Are you confident your office has done enough?
Of course, we've done enough, and we're doing more every single day. This is a political matter. This is not a serious thing.
So how are you going to sit here, Attorney General, saying I'm mischaracterizing? I read word for word your quote. I then showed it to the entire dais, the entire audience here today. How are you going to sit here and say that I mischaracterized you?
God damn.
Congressman, I believe you mischaracterized me because clearly what I was referring to by not serious is that the serious issue of fraud is being politicized and converted into a political weapon. That is not a serious matter in my view. That is something that I believe all of us should take seriously, but we're not taking seriously enough. So, sir, I would say very clearly, fraud is a odious, horrible, malignant thing, and that's why it should not be turned into a political weapon. But we should come together on a bipartisan
The reason
basis
it's becoming political, sir, is because of statements like that when confronted with the $9 billion of fraud in your state as the top cop in your state that you're clearly not doing enough to address. I want to move on. Reverend Tolligard, you said in your opening statement that today's hearing is about fraud in Minnesota, quote, unquote, which is serving as a pretext for the terror the federal government has brought to the people of Minnesota. This fraud has been used as a rationale for deploying 3,000 federal immigrant enforcement agents into our state. Did you say that, Reverend?
Yes.
This is absolutely false. These federal agents were actually brought in to the state of Minnesota for a very specific operation to remove illegal alien criminals. It wasn't because of the fraud. That's being handled under a completely different agency and ICE and everything else. That's the U.S. District Attorney, okay? Did you know that?
The administration has linked all of these things together.
Well, they've linked the fact that you guys supported an open border that let in $15 to $20 million, and some of the fallout from that is fraud, like the $9 billion we're talking about today. Some of it are the rapists, the gangsters, the people that are committing fraud. They're burglarizing people, they're carjacking people. It's all kind of linked together. It's also linked to the SAVE Act, which many of you guys and my Democrat colleagues don't want to vote for, even though 83% of Americans support it. It's all linked together, but that's not what this operation was about. So you're bearing false witness in this hearing today, because that's not what that operation was about at all.
What I'm here to talk about is the suffering of Minnesotans at the hands of federal agents, including children and their parents, and the great devastation and harm that it has caused across our state and across our wonderful communities.
Have you spoken about Lake and Riley or any of the American victims that have been raped, murdered, or killed by these illegal aliens, Reverend? I didn't think so. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now, Chair recognizes Mr. Min from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for convening this hearing. Let's start at the outset by just stating the obvious. Waste, fraud, and abuse are horrible. They're stealing from taxpayers. They're taking money and food out of the mouths of hungry kids. I've spent my career fighting against fraud. I started my career at the SEC, prosecuting corporate fraud, continued on as a law professor, teaching the next generation. And as someone on the Oversight Committee, this is a very, very important issue to me. Again, every dollar that is stolen from these programs is a dollar that's not just taken from us hardworking taxpayers. It is something that is meant for better use. And so I appreciate the gist of this hearing, but as I pointed out in prior hearings on allegations of fraud in Minnesota, the singular and exclusive focus on the Somalian community in Minnesota seems very partisan and wrong, because we know there's massive fraud across this country, particularly in southern states, including states like Florida and Mississippi. Mississippi is still at trial right now over $77 million in welfare fraud. Federal prosecutors have recently arrested a Russian national accused of submitting billions of dollars in fraudulent schemes in Texas and Florida. And of course, Oklahoma and Alabama consistently rank as the highest states when it comes to SNAP fraud, and yet we've only focused on Minnesota. Why? As a freshman member, I've been here 14 months, but I've learned that their House Republicans are all single-issue voters with just a handful of exceptions. And that single issue, the only thing that you all care about is whether you're on Team Trump or not. And so when Donald Trump goes after Minnesota and falsely claims he won the election there 3 times and it was rigged against him, I pay close attention. When he says that he would no longer admit Somalians to this country because they contribute, quote, nothing to this country, I listen. That's a wildly racist statement, but it's going to reflect what Republicans are going to do, and that is why we're holding this hearing. I care about welfare fraud, and I care about the scumbags who rip off taxpayer money. But if this was about welfare fraud, we'd be also hauling in people like Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves and former NFL quarterback Brett Favre, who clearly knew about a scheme to send money to build a volleyball facility at the college his daughter was playing at, receive funds for $600,000 or more for work that he never did from the government, again, taking money from the mouths of children that are hungry. No, this hearing is not about welfare fraud. It's about placating Donald Trump. This committee is holding this hearing for the same reasons that it's ignoring the massive corruption we know that Donald Trump is engaged in his family, soliciting bribes from foreign governments and private companies in exchange for regulatory favor, for the same reason that Republicans are protecting pedophiles right now and that the DOJ is right now actively deleting Epstein files while we're at war with Iran. It's why they ignore their oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. It's why we're holding hearings on this rather than on ICE abuses or the fact that Donald Trump just took us into war without even consulting with Congress, let alone getting our authorization for military use or force or actual declaration of war in direct contravention of the Constitution of the United States.
You know what?
For those of us who care about taxpayer dollars, let's focus on that. This is horrible. But of course, we have seen instead
You're too
a
fucking
different type of abuse of our
pussified to
taxpayer
do any
dollars.
goddamn
They've
thing
taken our
except
taxpayer dollars
destroy
and used
this
them to
country.
fund abuses against our American
Eat a
people,
dick.
as a number of our witnesses have aptly described. And I want to just point out that until the murder of Alex Preddy, not a single DHS or ICE agent accused of wrongdoing, witnessed or videotaped assaulting Americans was suspended, faced any disciplinary action. That doesn't happen with police. When my local law enforcement are accused of misconduct, certainly if they're videotape shooting someone, they are subject to an investigation. Maybe they're justified or not, but they're suspended, removed from duty, investigated. None of that has happened until the murder of Alex Preddy and the outrage around that. Now, Governor Walz, I want to just briefly ask you, what's the economic impact that the deployment of ICE in Minnesota has had over the past few months?
Well, thank you, Congressman. I thank you for your characterization. I associate myself with you on fraud is horrific. It is corrosive. It hurts those people that are there, and taxpayers should demand accountability. And I think that's what we're trying to take. The issue can, again,
what's the economic impact? Like, I know business.
Look, for us, we just had our economic numbers, and I would tell people that we have to balance the budget every year. Minnesota is strongly, we're AAA bond rated. That shows up good. It doesn't account for what happened over the last 3 months. And by estimates, the city of Minneapolis estimates they lost $200 million alone. And I remind people, you saw pictures of Minneapolis. This happened across the state. Near my hometown of Mankato, Minnesota, in St. Peter, we saw a woman that was pulled over at gunpoint, a citizen. The chilling effect it had, businesses going under, especially immigrant-owned businesses, people who are illegally citizens, starting businesses, were shut down.
I'm just going to reclaim my time to make one final point here. I was at Minneapolis, had the chance to meet with you and others. I also met with a number of local police chiefs, and one of the things they told me, first, this is not the first time ICE has operated in Minnesota, but in the past, what is different about this time is that they did not coordinate, they did not tell anyone, and that resulted in a lot of 911 calls, because when you see masked men jumping out of vans, pulling people out, assaulting them, punching them in the head, as happens all the time with ICE agents. By the way, that's not a matter of training, it's a matter of picking people who are predisposed to violence. That costs our local police quite a lot of money. It's one of the reasons I'm going to be introducing the Recoup Act so that local jurisdictions are repaid for the funds that they expend due to ICE misconduct. With that, I yield back.
Gentlemen, yield back. Before I recognize Ms. Boebert,
law enforcement shouldn't be people that are predisposed to violence. They should be Care Bear motherfuckers. They should be the Cabbage Patch Kids. God fucking damn it. Criminals get violent. You don't want a man who can't reciprocate, or a woman who can't reciprocate when a criminal gets violent, because then that means the officer dies and the criminal goes free. Holy shit, what are we doing?
Mr. Gill, I understand you have a UC.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from the America First Policy Institute dated March 3rd, 2026, which details widespread and rampant fraud in Minnesota.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Ms. Boebert from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to summarize some of the things that have already been said here today rather than ask these questions directly. The federal prosecutors that we have now charged nearly 100 individuals across multiple Minnesota fraud schemes, including Feeding Our Future and related Medicaid, daycare, and autism programs, with 85 of those charged being of Somali descent. Governor Walz, your administration's Department of Education and Department of Human Services failed to act on multiple early fraud warnings about Feeding Our Future, allowing the theft of at least $250 million in federal child nutrition funds that were supposed to feed hungry kids during the COVID-19 pandemic. Governor Walz, I'd like to turn to the demographics and policy choices that enabled this. Since you took office, the Somali population in Minnesota has grown substantially. Recently, Fox 9 reported, the reporting puts the total over 107,000. Did your administration's soft on immigration policies, including expanded refugee programs and temporary protected status, contribute to that rapid growth?
I couldn't speak to why people moved to Minnesota, other than it's a great place to live.
It could be a sanctuary policy and refugee programs and temporary protected statuses. According to the Center for Immigration Studies analysis of census data, 81% of Minnesota households headed by Somali immigrants receive one or more forms of public assistance, compared to just 21% of native-born Minnesotan households. Why is that disparity so extreme under your watch, sir?
I can't speak specifically, Congressman, but I would anticipate that new generation immigrants, whether they be Norwegian or whether they be Hmong or whether they be Somali, probably on the front end as they're establishing home ownership, education.
I think we should be bringing folks to our country that are going to contribute and not just siphon off of the tax dollars of American citizens. Mr. Governor Walz, yes or no, would stricter vetting of immigrants and refugees have prevented many of these fraudsters from entering our country in the first place?
I wouldn't have any way to know that.
Do you agree with stricter vetting processes for those who are coming to our country?
I don't care where you're coming from. If you commit fraud, you're going to jail in Minnesota. That's what I care about, and that's what I'm here for.
Yes or no, should Somali immigrants or any other immigrants who defraud American taxpayers and steal funds intended for hungry children be deported immediately?
That's a decision for the federal government. You're responsible for immigration.
Governor Walz, do you know who Victoria Eileen Harwell is?
I do not believe I do.
What about American Mafalda Tyer?
I don't believe I do.
There. These are Minnesota women who were brutally killed by illegal aliens in your state. You don't know who they are, so I would also assume that you did not attend their vigils or speak out to their families when they were brutally killed by illegal aliens.
I'm not familiar with both of these, no, Congresswoman.
No, just the hard-hitting CNN ones. Yes or no, would you support ending Minnesota's sanctuary policies to stop these fraudsters and murderers from using your state as a safe haven?
Well, as I said on June 12th, we don't have sanctuary policies, and Tom Holman reiterated that here in the past few weeks that we do not either, and that we are cooperating as required.
Thank you, Governor. Will you direct local law enforcement to fully cooperate with ICE and federal agents and follow federal immigration laws that are currently on the books?
They do. If they want to do more, they can, but we have a floor that they have to, and that's been proven time and time again in Minnesota over this. That's why they're leaving, because we had cooperated.
Okay. Final question for you, Governor. There are multiple documented reports of Somali immigrants entering sham marriages, including siblings and close family members. solely for immigration purposes. Are you aware of these reports, and what, if anything, has your administration done to stop this kind of immigration fraud happening in your state?
States are not responsible for immigration screening, and I'm not familiar with what you're
You're not responsible for any vetting whatsoever?
Wow.
Okay, well, this is happening under your watch, and there's immigration fraud, so we will do everything that we can.
What up,
and
Biz?
hopefully
How
you
you
allow
doing?
your local law enforcement officers to coordinate with federal agents when we are going after these immigration fraudsters.
As we do.
Governor.
Thank you, Madam. Chair now recognizes Mr. Walkinshaw from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor, would you agree that fraud is not a victimless crime?
Okay, give me a
I would
sec.
agree with that. It is not a victimless crime.
I got to change some shit up real quick here. Cam controls, properties. We're bringing Davey in. Give me a second. Come on. Just bring Davey into the conversation. Boom. Yo.
Well, hello there. Hi, everybody.
All right. Flip this around. Oh, my God.
Oh. That's me.
Kinds of fucked up now. All right. Cam controls. Properties. Activate. Configure video.
I tried to take a nap. It
Saturation
didn't work.
set to 218. What the fuck?
Racist is set 218?
My saturation.
Oh, I thought you said race is set to 218. I'm like, what does that mean?
It just randomly kicked the fuck up. But okay. There we go.
Yeah, see? Streamer does that all the time.
Flip that.
He's fucking...
There we go.
Why is his eyebrows bushier than his fucking head?
I mean, it's fucking walls. What do you want? What?
Well, I mean, he is retarded.
All right. So we are 3 hours into it. Ladies and gentlemen, it is about 5 o'clock. Give me a few... I'm going to hit the rumble cut thing here real quick. Go ahead and just give me a few minutes. I'm going to lock everything down. We're going to take it to the
Hey, do you hear this real quick?
Bazinga. Yes. We're going to take it to the members only side. I will finish this up tomorrow, and we will get into the Hillary Clinton one. There we go. Fuck. We're about to head over there. We're going to lock it down for the members only and everything like that. Ladies and gentlemen, stay where you are if you're on YouTube side and you're a member. Rumble side, if you're premium, just stay where you are. We will be right back. Give us just a few minutes.
Messages. We'll be right. Hey, it's me, Davey. You know, the simple one. Here at Off Label Podcast, we're all about doing things the off-label way. But without you, we're just two idiots who talk to each other on the internet. So please, if you could, hit that like button, repost, and give us a follow. And if you're feeling frisky enough, throw a comment. We now return you to our regularly scheduled bullshit. Isn't that hard?
I mean, it's not.
So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists.
You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. Looking for change, looking for pain. Pulling a mob, pushing a train. I'll never stop, stick to a lane. Pick up the pieces and go rearrange. I'll be the best above all the rest, put me to the test. Expect nothing less, you check as I'm chess. What's happening next? He got the venom, a tangible weapon, no coming in second. This life is a lesson. He got a new engine from pain, it's a blessing. New focus, no guessing, just bold and obsession. All in his possession, you got their attention. I'll leave an impression and take a redemption. Just kill no discretion. Your mind is a weapon. 11-11, it's time for progression. You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go